Chapter 227. Playing tricks on the pretty boy 15. He had spent 1,000 gold coins here at Old Chen's place, and had bought 10 lumps of source stone. However, he had not reaped any gains from those source stones. Now it just so happened he had bumped into an enemy with more money than sense. If he didn't blackmail her, who else was he going to extort money from? Lu Qingfeng fanned himself. His face had an abnormally sinister smile. Su Luo's brows were tightly creased with a bullied and anxious appearance. 1,000 tael? No way. At most 100 tael. The price is fixed at 1,000 gold coins. Lu Qingfeng coldly snorted and arrogantly lifted his eyebrows. How could you just open with a random price like this? Clearly the previous 9 source stones were all cut open, and not even a fart could be seen. How could you ask me to also pay your bill for those? Do you really regard me as a fool? Su Luo glared at him, not at all convinced. Lu Qingfeng fanned himself and unhurriedly said, "This lord concedes that you said a lot. However, this lord wants you to hand over 1,000 gold coins now. Otherwise, that obnoxious puppy of yours will be this lord's compensation. Humph humph, now you choose." Su Luo appeared to be at a loss. She hesitated for a while and finally feebly asked, "Couldn't you make it a little less expensive?" "No way." The more Su Luo's manner weakened, the more imposing and strong Lu Qingfeng's manner became. He was overbearing and forceful as he waited for Su Luo's response. 1,000 gold coins, the price is non-negotiable. Now reply quickly, are you going to compensate me in gold coins, or give me that obnoxious puppy? At this moment, Lu Qingfeng really believed that Su Luo was afraid of him. Su Luo smirked in her head, but her face only revealed an appearance of someone who was about to sob. She thought it over again and again. In the end, she reluctantly handed over her purse to Lu Qingfeng. Before Lu Qingfeng could take it, Su Luo withdrew her hand. "What are you doing now?" Lu Qingfeng angrily said as he glared at Su Luo with eyes wide open. Su Luo merely turned around to look at Old Chen and said to him, "Will Uncle Chen act as a witness for me, please?" When the time came, and the crystal stone was dug out of that source stone, what was to be done if Lu Qingfeng changed his mind and reneged on this deal? There was no doubt Lu Qingfeng was this type of immoral character. Doing this kind of thing would indeed be a piece of cake for him. Just now, Old Chen was able to intimidate Lu Qingfeng to stop with just one sentence. Su Luo was clearly able to understand that Old Chen was Lu Qingfeng's nemesis. Old Chen took a slight glance at Su Luo. A pair of eyes that had become cloudy with the passage of the years, all of a sudden, had a fleeting flash of coldly clear rays of light. He was just like that, unmoving as he quietly sized up Su Luo. His eyes had a complicated expression. This kind of examining gaze made Su Luo's heart a little upset from fear. She had a faint feeling that since the time she had first taken a step into this residence, Old Chen had an attitude of probing and examining her the entire time. This made her heart become secretly curious, sizing her up for quite a while. It was not known how many circles Old Chen's forceful mind revolved around. Finally he agreed and nodded his head. He indifferently said, "Fine," agreed. Lu Qingfeng momentarily was stumped for words. This was simply too hard to believe. Su Luo was unaware of Old Chen's origins, but Lu Qingfeng knew a little bit about it. Otherwise, he as the second young master from the Prime Minister's residence wouldn't be so afraid of the consequences of offending this old man from the marketplace. From his own impression, this rotten old man was always unsmiling and laconic. For a long period of time, Lu Qingfeng had believed that this rotten old man was mute, because he had never seen the old man talk to anyone. Afterwards, he had come more often, and occasionally would hear a word or two from the old man's mouth. However, the majority of the time, Old Chen wouldn't take notice of other people, even if that person the mercenary union's president, the venerable Beichen. However, this loathsome girl, she would actually invite this rotten old man to act as a witness? And this rotten old man had actually agreed? Regarding this issue, Lu Qingfeng becomes somewhat confused. In the end, what was the origin of this loathsome girl? Chapter 228. Speechless on the spot. 1. To say she was from a noble background, but she obviously looked like a waste. Moreover, her complexion was a waxy yellow with average features. On her body, He really couldn't make out any of the telling mannerisms and aloofness a person from noble family background would have. To say she was from a commoner background, but against all expectations, in the raw material marketplace, even the captain of the guards would come over to stand up for her. Moreover, this rotten old man also gave her special treatment. Therefore Lu Qingfeng was perplexed. Then just write a document of proof. Su Luo smilingly said. Document of proof? Old Chen shot a glance at Lu Qingfeng. His muddy eyes narrowed dangerously. It had a kind of raw cold aura of a sword being unsheathed. No need. There's no need for something like a document of proof. Having you the elder, vouching for this exchange, who would dare to renege? Who doesn't want to continue mingling in this raw materials marketplace? Lu Qingfeng repeatedly waved his hand, while forcing out a pretend smile. Old Chen then turned his gaze to face Su Luo. He nodded his head and coldly said, Rest assured, even if you cut out a piece of green crystal stone, nobody would dare to covet what's yours. A smiling expression appeared in Su Luo's eyes. Since Uncle Chen said it, then someone as humble as me naturally will believe it. Su Luo had barely finished speaking when she immediately took out a bag from her wide sleeves. With the next movement, she tossed it to Lu Qingfeng. 1,000 gold coins, no more no less. Now we are even. Right. Lu Qingfeng thought that Su Luo had given in because of his own threat. So he was elated, and in a very cheerful mood, because in this way, he had earned back all the gold coins he lost today. Lu Qingfeng weighed the bag full of gold coins, smiling with a belittling expression, while looking at Su Luo, and waved his hands. Okay, now that piece of urine-covered, waste of a rock material is now yours. Speaking of this girl, she really was stupid. He had merely used a little intimidation on her. But unexpectedly, she really took out 1,000 gold coins. Just looking at her forehead, he saw 8 words. Foolish person with too much money, come quickly. Lu Qingfeng was extremely happy. Humming a ditty, he contentedly sat down under the wisteria tree's blossoms. He had one leg crossed over the other, contemptuously looking down at Su Luo. And also at this time, Su Luo was simply ecstatic. 1,000 gold coins. She had merely used 1,000 gold coins to exchange for that piece of source stone. This was simply too worthwhile. The little divine dragon's Awa's speech was something nobody else understood, but she actually did. Earlier, she had already made up her mind to do whatever it took to get this piece of source stone. Su Luo swept a quick glance at the still feeling blissful Lu Qingfeng. Seeing that right now, he had an expression of flaunting the fact that he had gotten the better end of the deal and had taken advantage of her. She couldn't help feeling that he was laughable. Lu Qingfeng didn't want to leave? Extremely good. Then she'd just let him see with his own eyes his missed opportunity. Let him regret until his intestines were green. Su Luo was just about to go and cut open the source stone. However, she never expected that old Chen would be a step faster and walk right in front of her. He snatched that half of the source stone from her with a serious expression and said, Miss, this time, let this old man cut open the source stone for you, all right? Su Luo somewhat embarrassedly said, Uncle Chen, you wanting to cut the stone for me can't be better. However, this source stone was peed on by my puppy. How could I have the nerve to ask you to cut it open for me? Old Chen faintly smiled as he quickly glanced at Su Luo. He lowered his voice, and stressing every word said, Being able to get the little divine gold dragon's pea should be an honor for this piece of source stone. Ha! Su Luo was speechless on the spot. This old Chen. He, how did he know that the puppy was not a real puppy, but rather from the dragon race? Moreover, he could readily point out that he was from the most respected royal family of the dragon race, the divine gold dragon race? This was simply too formidable. Seeing Su Luo's entire face become stunned from surprise, the corner of old Chen's mouth seemed to lift into a shallow arc. He gave a humph and coldly said, What are you afraid of? Old Chen doesn't have the time to prattle this everywhere. Chapter 229. Speechless on the spot too. No, that's not it. Why would you, an elderly person, think? In the end, how was he able to see through the disguise? Su Luo picked up the little guy and looked at him from top to bottom. According to her own eyes, this clearly was a pure white-colored little puppy. Or has it leaked the appearance of a little divine dragon? Old Chen merely smiled and didn't respond. He merely looked deeply at Su Luo and the little divine dragon. Afterwards, he turned his entire attention to concentrate on that piece of source stone that was soaked in urine. Old Chen from the start didn't choose to use the cutting knife, but instead used the stone sharpening knife. From the surface, he slowly polished towards the interior. During this entire process, his expression was serious and very focused. He was very careful and cautious, afraid that because of a coarse action, he would cause an abrasion that would ruin a high-quality crystal stone. And now, apart from Su Luo, there was another person watching at Old Chen's side. This person was none other than Lu Qingfeng, who was extremely happy just a moment ago. In the beginning, he was indeed deliriously happy. However, when he saw Old Chen take the stone from Su Luo to personally cut it, afterwards, he became somewhat unsure and perturbed. Hastily, he stood up and voluntarily ran over to observe. Old Chen's pair of hands that was cutting the stone flowed gracefully, giving off an extraordinary sense of beauty. It was just that the source stone gradually got smaller and smaller from polishing. When it finally was the size of a goose egg, a trace of a crystal stone still could not be seen. The breath Lu Qingfeng was holding suddenly loosened. He saw Su Luo's expression becoming downcast immediately. He smiled and was overjoyed. Hey, you couldn't have thought that there really is a piece of crystal stone in here, right? Really made me laugh to death. I already said it was just waste material. How could it have a crystal stone inside? Look here, you made Old Chen work so hard for you in vain. Su Luo's hands was looped around her arms. Her eyes swept across him coldly. What? You think there's no crystal rock inside? Do you want to make a bet? Su Luo's gaze stayed on that purse hanging on Lu Qingfeng's waist. 1,000 gold coins was not a small sum of money. Spending it on source stones was not altogether inexcusable. However, if Lu Qingfeng got to keep the coins from Su Luo, then she would certainly not feel very pleased about this outcome. I'll bet, who is afraid of whom? Lu Qingfeng couldn't wait to cheat more gold coins from Su Luo's body, because when he looked at Su Luo, he didn't have a good feeling. Whenever he saw her out of luck, he was sincerely happy. Then okay, let's just bet with the bag of gold coins from before. Su Luo raised her hand and unconcernedly said, if there is nothing inside that goose egg-sized source stone, then it's your win. The converse result is my win. What do you think? Okay. Lu Qingfeng threw that bag of gold coins on the table. Su Luo also didn't fall behind. She raised her hand and conveniently, another bag of gold coins appeared on the table. Afterwards, both of their gazes transferred to Old Chen's direction, their eyes staring fixedly on Old Chen's skillful hands that were wrinkled like an orange peel, but still nimble. Following that, the source stone gradually became smaller and smaller. It finally ended up being only as big as a chicken egg. The corner of Lu Qingfeng's mouth curved into a magnificent, proud smile. He contemptuously swept a glance at Su Luo. You're definitely going to lose. The outcome hasn't been decided yet, so be patient and wait for it. Su Luo looked at that piece of source stone, as she responded with humble-sounding words. A crystal stone that could make the little divine dragon this excited. It was definitely not a low-grade crystal stone. Most likely, it was of a higher grade than a green-colored crystal stone, right? Su Luo held her chin and silently pondered. Humph, a dead duck mouthing off. Just wait a bit, you will be humiliated. Lu Qingfeng gave a cold snort. Inside of a source stone that small would have a crystal stone? Who were you trying to fool? He sure wouldn't believe it. However, very quickly, reality gave a resounding slap to Lu Qingfeng's face. Lu Qingfeng wasn't able to smile again. There was no time for it to retreat. So momentarily, the smile at the corner of his mouth became stiff. Chapter 230. Speechless on the spot 3. Because he unexpectedly saw, on the edge of that chicken egg-sized source stone, a faint trace of a greenish-blue color had actually emerged. Was it green or cyan-colored? It was hard to tell apart, but regardless, having any color was great. Also at this moment, Old Chen's gaze became even more focused. He slowed down the speed he was using to polish the stone. He very carefully rubbed away at this corner and that corner. Soon, The crystal stone that was concealed beneath the grayish-white layer emerged in front of everyone's eyes. Crystal stone. A cyan with some green-colored crystal stone? This was simply too frightening. Originally, even a green-colored crystal stone was extremely rare. On this continent, it was difficult to get one with simply 10,000 gold coins. Yet, before everyone's eyes, this piece was not only green, but it even had a bright cyan color. A cyan with some green, it could be treated and sold as a cyan-colored crystal stone. This was worth 50,000 gold coins. Lu Qingfeng only felt his legs go limp, with his vision turning dark. He almost fainted. How was this possible? It was simply too inconceivable. It was beyond a person's imagination. This clearly was waste material that he didn't want, and then discarded. Heavens! He had actually sold a source stone containing a cyan and green-colored crystal stone worth 50,000 gold coins, for merely 1,000 gold coins to another person. Presently, Lu Qingfeng really was regretful to the extent that his intestines were green. He was itching to pounce over and snatch that crystal stone back into his own arms. Uncle Chun, you have such skillful hands. Such formidable luck. If you didn't personally undertake this task, and I were to try to cut out this crystal stone, then for sure, I would have broken and ruined it. Su Luo's expression was unperturbed. Her smile was the same as before, not changing even a little bit because of the appearance of a high-grade crystal stone. Old Chen saw Su Luo's unruffled and calm expression and contrasted it against Lu Qingfeng, who was pounding his chest and stomping his feet. His eyes narrowed. Put it away carefully. Okay. Su Luo carefully received this piece of crystal stone and started to admire it in great detail. This cyan with green-colored crystal stone was only the size of a pigeon's egg. Laying in the palm of her white hand, under the light of the sun, it shone with brilliant rays. Moreover, you could feel the distinct rich spirit aura flowing above it. Lu Qingfeng firmly fixed his gaze on Su Luo. That pair of eyes which were previously rejoicing in her misfortunes, now were filled with a chilly frosty haze. Su Luo lifted her eyes, indifferently took a quick glance at him, and didn't say a word. In front of his face, she put away the 2 bags of money that was on the table. Playing down her actions, she said, "You lost." Lu Qingfeng's expression became even uglier. The 1,000 gold coins that he had won back with great difficulties was so easily once again taken away by this loathsome girl. What's more, Lu Qingfeng's rigid gaze stared at that cyan with green-colored crystal stone. He was itching to snatch it back with one grab and take it for himself. This source stone was his. No, it was originally his. Lu Qingfeng gritted his teeth and said, "Miss, name a price for this crystal stone." "Whatever for." Su Luo unhappily rolled her eyes at him. "Sell it to me. No matter how much your asking price, sell it to me." Lu Qingfeng bit down on his teeth, stressing each word until he spit out this sentence. That pair of red eyes containing a raging inferno fixedly stared at Su Luo, as if, once Su Luo refused, he would unhesitantly rush over and choke her to death. Su Luo impatiently let out a sigh and speechlessly looked at Lu Qingfeng. "I say, the second young master Lu, what is the problem with you? Why is it that you always want to buy things from me?" Su Luo stretched out her hand and started to count on each finger. "First, you wanted me to sell you my red crystal stone. Then, you wanted me to sell you my spirit pet. Now, landing here, you once again threatened me to sell you my cyan-colored crystal stone. I say, the second young master Lu, for good or bad, you are still a legitimate son of the Prime Minister's home. How could you have such a never-seen-the-world manner?" Chapter 231. Speechless on the spot. 4. Su Luo's words immediately became concise and sharp as she got to the main point straightaway. These remarks, in a bantering tone, carried a strong ridiculing undertone, since her tone was not necessarily strict. However, it enumerated Lu Qingfeng's shortcomings from start to finish, which immediately made him flush with anger. He gasped as his breathing became coarse. He was infuriated until he was hopping mad. Lu Qingfeng's body was shaking and his finger pointed at Su Luo. "Loathsome girl, what nonsense are you talking about?" Unexpectedly, Su Luo seemed to be very disdainful of him. She carried the little divine dragon and unhurriedly said, "Oh? So what I said just now was all nonsense. Before, didn't you, second young Master Lu, threaten me to sell the crystal stone to you? Maybe I heard wrong. If so, then indeed, I am very sorry. Saying this, Su Luo carried the little divine dragon, turned around and proceeded to leave. The Lu Qingfeng behind her was infuriated till he was half dead. The one breath he stifled in his throat moved up and down, not knowing if it should snarl out or be swallowed down. Su Xiaoyuan, who was behind Su Luo, had an extremely worshipful gaze as he stared at Su Luo. His pair of eyes was sparkling with light, as if he was watching the idol he most adored. Cool. She was simply too cool. That was the second young master from the Prime Minister's residence. The miss had actually showed no quarter when criticizing him, showering him with abuse. Not only did she scold the opponent until he was dejected and covered in dirt, she also made the opponent unable to voice his bitter suffering. This ability was truly at the pinnacle when it came to scolding someone. Su Xiaoyuan's admiration was so great that he was about to kneel down in worship. Su Xiaoyuan, what are you thinking about? Quickly come and lead the way. Today, I still haven't selected any source stones. Su Luo patted this little guy's head. Just a moment ago, she had seen old Chen. But after the crystal stone was cut out, he had disappeared without a word or sound. Now, she could only rely on her little guide. Oh, okay, Su Xiaoyuan said. With this, his thoughts returned. His pair of eyes was still sparking with a worshipping light like before while gazing at Su Luo. Su Xiaoyuan seemed to be very familiar with this place. He guided Su Luo through many twists and turns as they walked towards the inner area. Very soon, they arrived at a shabby remote courtyard in the residence. This remote courtyard was empty and bare. Inside, there wasn't even the basic furnishing. It only had piles and piles of source stones. The source stones were properly labeled and separated based on their grades. Every pile had a clearly labeled corresponding price tag. And also on the side were stone cutting tools provided free of charge to customers who wanted to cut open the stones. Just after Su Luo and Su Xiaoyuan left, Lu Qingfeng suddenly convulsed and woke up from his stupor. His gloomy gaze stared fixedly at the stone fragments on the ground, his thoughts gradually becoming clearer. Today, in total, he had only seen that loathsome girl twice, and both times, she had been able to cut out a crystal stone. What did this indicate? This indicated that it was not because of her good luck, but she had a precious treasure on her body. This was a treasure that could distinguish whether a source stone had a crystal stone inside it or not. Yes, it must be like this, no doubt about it. No, I must follow after her. Even if she ate meat, he should at least snatch away some soup to drink. He couldn't let her monopolize all the convenient advantages. Thinking up to here, Lu Qingfeng's expression was restored. He brought his servant and walked with large strides towards the remote courtyard where Su Luo had gone. When Lu Qingfeng arrived, Su Luo was crouched on the ground, carefully examining the source stones, looking at it one by one. Of course, she was merely faking it. The one who truly knew if a source stone had a crystal stone was the little divine dragon, and not her. However, she could not simply reveal the little divine dragon's skills. Otherwise, relying on her current puny strength, not only was she unable to protect him, she would instead bring him harm. Suddenly, Su Luo sensed a fervently hot and sinister gaze focused on her back. Su Luo didn't need to turn her head around to guess that this pair of hate-filled eyes certainly belonged to Lu Qingfeng. Chapter 232, Speechless on the Spot 5. What was he doing following after her here? Was he still thinking to forcefully buy the cyan-colored crystal stone from her hand? Su Luo thought about it and shook her head in denial. At least within the Chen residence, Lu Qingfeng wouldn't dare to brazenly mess around. Then, what was his purpose in following her now? Su Luo's gaze swept towards the little divine dragon, who was rolling and bouncing around on top of the source stones. Suddenly, her gaze turned to Frost. That's right. He might have guessed at a clue and ran over to add more pressure to her. Since it was like this, then wouldn't it be better to? Su Luo's mouth evoked into a sinister sneer. Lu Qingfeng, Lu Qingfeng, since you were unwilling to give up and still wanted to play, then this miss will toy with you to death. Su Luo feigned a very serious examining manner. She looked at the source stone that weighed over hundreds of kilograms in front of her inch by inch. Then, she rubbed and tapped it. Suddenly, a happy surprised look appeared on her face. However, it seemed as if she was also afraid of people seeing her expression, so she exerted her will to purse her lips instead. It looked as if she was trying to control her own excited expression. After a moment, she furtively lifted her head and her eyes circled around. After she found that nobody took notice of her, she then softly released a breath. The scenario mentioned above, all of it entered Lu Qingfeng's gaze. Su Luo took out an ink stick and was just about to write on top of the source stone. However, all of a sudden, a hand extended over from the side. Quickly, he wrote down his last name on that over hundreds of kilograms source stone. Old Chen's rule was that whoever wrote their name first on top of the source stone, that source stone would then belong to that person. Su Luo turned her head and looked. She discovered that the person who came was actually Lu Qingfeng. She couldn't help being agitated and indignantly roared. "What's the matter with you? Where did you come from? It was obviously me who settled on this one first. When other people look at stone materials, bystanders are not allowed to interfere. Such a simple rule, and you couldn't even understand? Who knew?" Lu Qingfeng only swept her a cold and quick glance, then arrogantly said, "This source stone, this lord had already settled on it earlier. Only due to urgently leaving to cut stones. That's why it was temporarily set aside. As to saying who was earlier, then I was also before you." Su Luo seemed to have not been very lightly angered. Her little face was flushed from anger, with an attitude of itching to rush over to choke the opponent to death. What you? If you have the ability, then you should have acted faster. Your actions were so slow. Who are you trying to blame?" Lu Qingfeng contemptibly rolled his eyes at Su Luo. He only excitedly directed his lackeys to carry away that source stone. Good. I'll let you have this lump of stone. However, you can clearly see that this lump of source stone is 3,000 gold coins. Don't you regret it?" Su Luo seemed to be very indignant. She stomped her feet and very unhappily walked away. 3,000 gold coins? Only now had Lu Qingfeng clearly seen the marked price on top. Suddenly, he felt his heart jump. Such an expensive source stone? However, it didn't matter, since that loathsome girl wanted to buy this source stone so badly. Then that proved that a crystal stone was inside this source stone. It was surely like this. That loathsome girl must be bluffing. She probably wanted him to transfer the source stone to her. Lu Qingfeng only coldly snorted. He wasn't going to fall for it. After that, Su Luo concentrated her attention as before. She carefully and meticulously tapped the stones. Afterwards, every time when she was just about to choose a stone, Lu Qingfeng would seize the opportunity and snatch it away. Finally, Su Luo exploded in anger. "Lu Qingfeng, what is the meaning of this?" Lu Qingfeng triumphantly said, "These source stones are not your family's. If this lord wants to buy, he will buy. What does it have to do with you?" Okay. Then you can buy all of these. Hope you don't go bankrupt." Su Luo panted with rage and stomped her feet. Seeing Su Luo was infuriated until she was hopping mad, Lu Qingfeng's mood increasingly soared up. What if inside those source stones there were no crystal stones? If that were so, how could this loathsome girl be infuriated to this point? It was obvious that this loathsome girl was flying into a rage out of humiliation. Lu Qingfeng calmly waved his fan and blindly followed Su Luo's actions behind her back. Chapter 233. Speechless on the spot 6. Those 7 pieces of source stones should help you earn enough profit. Why are you still following me? Su Luo unhappily glared at him. She used her maximum lung capacity and yelled out loud. "Uncle Chen, Lu Qingfeng would not abide by the rules for gambling stones. You should come over quickly and take care of this." Lu Qingfeng was so angry that he almost sprained his neck. This loathsome girl really thought that old Chen was her real uncle. For her to even call him over? However, old Chen, who usually appeared and disappeared unpredictably, actually really did show up this time. His pair of dark moody eyes gazed at Lu Qingfeng with deadly stillness. His voice was stern and cold. "Not abiding by the rules, then get lost." Afterwards, under Lu Qingfeng's incredulous gaze, Old Chen once again quietly and lacking any interest disappeared. Lu Qingfeng opened and closed his mouth, and choked back his saliva with great difficulty. His gaze slowly shifted up to Su Luo's face. Could this loathsome girl and Old Chen really have a previous relationship? Humph. Su Luo enthusiastically swept him a glance. She picked up a few lumps of source stones. After she paid gold coins for them, she placed them in front of the stone cutting tools and started to cut the stones. Right now the time of the day was still early. However, a few frequent visitors also came to Old Chen's residence. Gradually, the surroundings started to become livelier. Su Luo took the cutting tools with her own hands, and then fixed the source stone in place. She didn't expend much strength before removing the outer layer of the stone. The stone now was a shining white color without any marks, indicating that it could have a crystal stone inside. Su Luo's expression was the same as before as she unhurriedly continued to cut the stone. In Old Chen's place, very few people would cut open a source stone. Su Luo's actions immediately attracted a crowd of people to come over. Gradually, she was surrounded by a group of people. Lu Qingfeng's attention was also attracted to Su Luo, who was cutting stones on the side. He couldn't help joining the crowd around her and surreptitiously watched her. He felt that this loathsome girl's luck was extremely good. Maybe this time, she would cut out a high-grade crystal stone again. When Su Luo saw Lu Qingfeng's silhouette from the corner of her eyes dropped down. Nobody paid attention to that unfathomable and obscure deep meaning in her eyes. Cao Pai, one crystal stone. The piece of source stone in Su Luo's hand definitely contained a crystal stone. However, it was the lowest grade of crystal stone called Cao Pai crystal stone. Cao Pai crystal stone, as its name implied, was a crystal stone with just a very thin layer under the surface of the source stone. Beneath the thin layer of crystal stone, the inside was empty of any crystal stone. This type of Cao Pai crystal stone was used to cheat and fool people. Before, Su Luo had originally fancied this piece of source stone, however. Then the little divine dragon said Cao Pai crystal stone. These 4 words to her. Just these 4 words immediately made Su Luo change her plans. Since this Cao Pai crystal stone was used to cheat people, then not to defraud Lu Qingfeng. This kind of foolish spendthrift, who else would she save it for? Therefore Su Luo decided to cut the source stone containing the Cao Pai crystal stone open at the scene. Based on the little divine dragon's directions, Su Luo slowly cut away at it using the stone cutting tool. Cut after cut. This source stone in front of her was worth 5,000 gold coins, and she was treating it as if it was an ordinary stone. One could see that her hands were as firm and steady as a boulder, with speed that was fast as the wind, gentle and beautiful movements that were natural and unforced. Her hands didn't tremble even a tiny bit. Su Luo's slender and pale fingers lifted up the thin outer layer that was cut open. Everyone followed her gaze and looked at that source stone. Seeing what was underneath, suddenly, everyone inhaled a deep breath in shock. Heavens! What was happening here? A crystal stone appeared. This was for certain. However, unexpectedly, it was actually a cyan-colored crystal stone. Wasn't this young lady's luck rather too good? Cyan-colored crystal stone, ah, how precious was this? Hadn't it been a while since news of cutting out a cyan-colored crystal stone in the imperial capital came out? Momentarily, everyone's mouth was open wide. Their expression when looking at Su Luo was as if they had seen a ghost. For a very long time, they were stunned and couldn't return back to reality. 1. Cao Pai is the Chinese spelling meaning thin layer like sheepskin or leather. The author is describing a paper-thin layer made of crystal stone with nothing inside. So when you cut it open it looks like it could be a solid crystal stone, but inside there is nothing. Chapter 234. Speechless on the spot 7. As Lu Qingfeng's pair of eyes watched Su Luo, he almost spit out blood. This loathsome girl, how could she be so great? Just a minute ago, she had cut out a cyan-colored crystal stone. Now once again, it was a cyan-colored crystal stone. She. In front of her. Could these crystal stones be merely cabbages in the field, that she could randomly pick one and find one? Right now Lu Qingfeng was so envious that he almost spit out some blood. Even Old Chen, whose movements were always mysterious, had now quietly appeared behind Su Luo. He gazed at Su Luo's figure with a complicated expression. The area that was cut open wasn't big. To say it more accurately, it only exposed a section that was the size of a baby's palm. However, that cyan-colored radiance that everyone would be delighted with seemed to gush out. It was clear and sparkling, with a rich spirit power that refreshed the mind. 30,000 gold. Nobody knew who first yelled out this sentence from the crowd. That person, while speaking, was also trying to squeeze into the crowd with all his might. The government official's hat on his head had become somewhat askew when he finally squeezed to Su Luo's side. Without saying a word, he squatted down to carefully observe that piece of source stone. Yes, no doubt about it. This spirit power that could refresh the mind couldn't possibly be faked. It undoubtedly was a cyan-colored crystal stone. Right now, Su Luo had only cut out a little piece. What was hidden inside the source stone behind this section, nobody knew. So this oldly person started to bid without delay. Because once Su Luo cut out a complete piece of crystal stone, then its worth would basically be hard to predict. However, nobody present at the scene was a fool. Since Oldly could see though the situation, how could they also not understand? What was more, it resembled a cyan-colored crystal stone. This kind of high-grade crystal stone, on this continent, was always a commodity in high demand. Something that was rarely discovered but highly sought after, with a matching pricelessness in the market. 40,000 gold. Another person did his best to squeeze into the crowd towards Su Luo, while loudly shouting out a price. Little miss, this old man will give you 40,000 gold. Do you want to sell it? 44,000 gold. Before Su Luo could respond, another person followed closely behind with another offer. 45,000 gold. Immediately, another person rushed in with a bid. 46,000 gold. 50,000 gold. Oldly clapped his hands and loudly shouted out. Everyone cutting out a cyan-colored crystal stone. The market price is set at 50,000 gold. This hasn't been completely cut out. Nobody knows what's in there. It's best that everyone doesn't let their emotions affect their decisions. From the corner of her eyes, Su Luo glanced at Lu Qingfeng, who was standing on the side with an excitement-filled expression. The corner of her mouth hooked up slightly. Lu Qingfeng, just waiting for you to bid. While thinking this, Su Luo followed the previous cut and took another slice along the side. After the knife sliced down, lifting up that small piece of the outer layer. Indeed, it was still a cyan-colored crystal stone. Momentarily, everyone became excited. They became impassioned and created a commotion. Yes, it really was a cyan-colored crystal stone. It was absolutely not wrong. Since this slice could cut out a cyan-colored crystal stone, then naturally, the next cut would also have it. Su Luo saw Lu Qingfeng's pair of eyes emitting a red light. Both of his hands were tightly clenched into fists. He was excited until his heart was bursting with joy. Good, very good, Lu Qingfeng. The person I want to defraud is none other than you. Come quickly. Not outside of Su Luo's expectations, Lu Qingfeng walked towards Su Luo with large strides. He took a quick glance at that cyan-colored crystal stone and straightaway opened his mouth to say, 80,000 gold coins. The market price of a cyan-colored crystal stone was originally 50,000 gold. However now, Lu Qingfeng had forcibly raised the price to 80,000. This made everyone look at each other in dismay for a moment. Oldly frowned. After carefully examining that opening again, he clenched his teeth and announced another price. 90,000 gold coins. Lu Qingfeng arrogantly raised his chin. A cyan-colored crystal stone is rarely found and much sought after. I, Lu Qingfeng, representing Prime Minister Lu's residence, bid 100,000 gold. Chapter 235. Speechless on the spot. 8. The elder in the Lu family had been stuck at the 6th rank for many years. He was at the point of time when he needed crystal stones the most. This cyan-colored crystal stone would probably be extremely helpful to him, helping him ascend to the 7th rank. At that time, the entire Lu family would jump ahead to become the most powerful noble family in the capital. When the time comes, he, Lu Qingfeng, would be greatly rewarded for contributing to the elevation of the Lu family. In this case, compared to the Lu family's future prospects, This insignificant 100,000 gold wouldn't be too high a cost, right? Lu Qingfeng arrogantly thought of this. 100,000 gold, ah. Su Luo's forefinger thoughtfully tapped at her chin with a somewhat awkward expression. Young Master Lu, you know this miss previously didn't like to sell crystal stones. The implication was that even 100,000 gold wasn't enough for her to look upon? Lu Qingfeng's expression stiffened. A dark haze flashed through his eyes. However, before he could yell out loud in anger, Su Luo's tone of voice had already changed. However, young Master Lu's price persuaded me. Then, with 100,000 gold, I'll transfer it to you. Lu Qingfeng laughed smugly. He was under the impression that this loathsome girl's bones were made of unshakable iron. So before, it was because the price he gave was inadequate. It just wasn't enough to move her. Sure enough, the stuff on this earth all had a price. Everything could be bought with gold. Underneath everyone's gaze. After second young Master Lu handed over 100,000 gold, that piece of source stone would then belong to him. Today, Lu Qingfeng could be said to have spent a lot of money on this matter. First, he was cheated out of a cyan with green-colored crystal stone by Su Luo. Then, he lost 1,000 gold coins to Su Luo. Afterwards, because he was snatching source stones from Su Luo again, he had spent close to 50,000 gold coins. And now, he had given her another 100,000 gold coins. In one day, Lu Qingfeng had spent nearly the entire yearly income from Prime Minister Lu's residence. It could truly be said that this was throwing money away recklessly. However, with regards to this large sum of money, Lu Qingfeng, at this moment, felt it was well worth spending. Then, what did he really receive in return? Now Lu Qingfeng was squatting on the ground, happily looking at this cyan-colored crystal stone that refreshed the mind. His brain was full of delusional fantasies. He imagined that when he went home, and when he offered this cyan-colored crystal stone, the surrounding people would admire him. Also, the elder would have a gratifying, smiling expression. While happily thinking about this, Lu Qingfeng couldn't help letting out a laugh with a pfff sound. The surrounding people became somewhat impatient from waiting. Some who were impatient started to loudly urge him. Could this second young Master Lu become stupid from being too happy? However, this crystal stone still hasn't been completely cut out. Who knows if after the following cut, underneath is really a cyan-colored crystal stone. That's right, second young Master Lu, stop being so happy. Quickly continue cutting. It's not too late to be happy after cutting it out. With this, Lu Qingfeng finally returned to reality from his sweet daydreams. He wiped away the saliva that had unintentionally leaked out at the corner of his mouth. He gave a slight cough and seriously said, Okay, this lord will personally cut this stone, allowing you guys to see with your own eyes how dazzling a cyan-colored crystal stone is. Lu Qingfeng held the handle of the knife with rapid attention as he held his breath, and looked at the source stone in front of his eyes. His expression appeared somewhat indecisive. Su Luo was disinclined to once again take notice of him. In any case, no matter how he cut, once this knife sliced down, from inside out without exception, it was all grayish-white colored waste. No matter what angle he started to cut, the result would be the same, because the only place with crystal stone had already been cut open by her. Moreover, this piece of cyan-colored source stone was merely a thin layer no thicker than the skin. As to its value, it probably wouldn't exceed several thousand gold. Having once again successfully defrauded Lu Qingfeng, Su Luo's mood started to greatly improve. She crooned a little ditty, and with Su Xiaoyuan, walked inside the residence. Because just now, before old Chen disappeared, he left her a few words. He asked her to go to the basement to look at the goods. Su Luo didn't know that even after such a long time, there was only one person who was asked to go to the basement to look at the goods, and it was only her. Chapter 236. Speechless on the spot. 9. When she asked Su Xiaoyuan, this child simply did not know that old Chen still had a basement warehouse in his home. Su Luo's hand held a candle as she walked down along the meandering flight of steps. Su Xiaoyuan, meanwhile, had been blocked from entering by another person at the basement's entrance. When Su Luo entered the basement, old Chen was just using his hand to stand up. He calmly sized her up, She didn't know why, but getting looked over by that kind of gaze, Su Luo suddenly felt like she had been seen through. It was as if all of her secrets had already been exposed in front of him. Old Chen merely gave her a sweeping glance, then turned his gaze away, after which he indifferently narrated. Curious about why this old man treats you so favorably? His voice was dark and deep. The huskiness carried many years of hardships. Su Luo nodded her head, and could not deny it. Compared to Lu Qingfeng, Old Chen had indeed always, intentionally or otherwise, stood by her side. Not only that, with a single glance, he had even managed to detect the little divine dragon's secret. This point made Su Luo extremely curious. Old Chen's expression was as indifferent as before, and he merely said, "In here, there is a piece of blue-colored crystal rock. If you can truly pick it out, naturally, this old man will tell you." Finished speaking, he looked deeply at Su Luo, and then turned around and exited the basement. What a mysterious old man. Anyway, it didn't matter. She was unable to pick out the source stone, but the little divine dragon could. Inside the basement, Su Luo scanned her surroundings, doing a full circle. Following her slowly moving gaze, a strange feeling emerged from her eyes. The basement's lighting was a bit dim, but to Su Luo, this wasn't much of a hindrance. She looked around closely, yet was once again shocked. Because the basement in front of her eyes, regardless of the area or the arrangement, unexpectedly, was an exact copy of Elder Zihua's cave dwelling. At that time, it was at Elder Zihua's residence where she obtained her first batch of source stones. It was also the first time she had found out about the existence of source stones. She didn't expect that the displays arranged here, unexpectedly, resembled those in the cave dwelling. In the end, just what was the relationship between Elder Zihua and Old Chen? Old Chen had given her special treatment compared to others. Was it because he had discovered that she had inherited Elder Zihua's legacy, so he would act this way? Su Luo's heart was full of questions. There weren't that many source stones in the basement. They were all piled up in a corner. The little divine dragon, following Su Luo's direction, picked out all the source stones in the basement that contained a crystal stone. This selection process unexpectedly shocked Su Luo. Wasn't the proportion of crystal stones here too high? Among the 30 source stones, there were 20 pieces that had crystal stones. Furthermore, even the worst grade of crystal stone was orange-colored, and the best was actually blue-colored. There really was a blue-colored crystal stone? Old Chen didn't deceive her? You actually did find the blue-colored crystal stone. Old Chen quietly appeared. When he saw the source stone containing the blue-colored crystal stone, an odd expression flashed through his eyes. Su Luo stared at him with a guarded expression. This old man appeared and disappeared abruptly. She also didn't know what was currently going on here. Old Chen merely waved his hand, indicating that she shouldn't be nervous. "Little miss, you need not be afraid. This old fellow isn't going to harm you." Seeing Su Luo's wrinkled brows, a smiling expression appeared in Old Chen's eyes. "Doesn't the little miss feel that this place seems very familiar?" Sure enough, Su Luo held the little divine dragon, gently stroking his soft and yielding fur. She nonchalantly looked at him. "Is Uncle Chen quite familiar with Elder Zihua?" Elder Zihua, these 3 words, seemed to be a kind of miraculous magical power. In a flash, it made Old Chen's turbid pair of eyes burst out with an odd and astonished radiance. Even though he did the utmost to keep it down, Su Luo, however, was able to sense it. Old Chen's excitement right now was because he had heard Elder Zihua, these 3 words. That was the reason why he became so excited. Su Luo saw that Old Chen's hands, which were concealed by his sleeves, tremble slightly. Chapter 237. Speechless on the spot. 10. Did you perhaps inherit the teachings of Elder Zihua? Old Chen's pair of old yellowish-gray eyes stared intensely at Su Luo. It flashed with a peculiar expression. Su Luo was able to perceive Old Chen's esteem and reverence for Elder Zihua, which came from the depths of his heart. Subconsciously, she felt that there was no need to continue concealing the truth. So she nodded slightly and asked, "Yes, I accidentally burst into his cave dwelling and obtained Elder Zihua's legacy. But how could you tell?" In fact, this point was what Su Luo was most curious about. How could old Chen tell that she had inherited Elder Zihua's legacy? She simply had not exposed anything. Right now, old Chen was completely immersed in his own world. Raising his head, you could faintly see the glistening of tears in his eyes. I waited for many years before I thought I wouldn't be able to wait for it to arrive in my lifetime. I didn't expect that during the final moments, I really waited and saw its arrival. Old Chen let out a long sigh. His expression was engrossed in remembering the past. What do you mean? Su Luo became even more puzzled. Back then, my great-grandfather was at Elder Zihua's side as his personal servant boy. Old Chen faintly watched Su Luo. Elder Zihua, aside from being the best apothecary on the continent, was also among only a handful of master stone gamblers. This was still not the most mystical thing. The most mystical thing was that Elder Zihua had actually refined a one-of-a-kind drug. A kind saying up to here. An oddly fantastical light flashed through old Chen's expression. But all of a sudden, his expression once again dimmed. This kind of unusual mystical drug, after you take it, it will allow people's eyes to see through the heavens at certain times. The so-called eyes that could see through the heavens is just the ability to see through the outer layers of a source stone into the interior and determine whether it contained a crystal stone or not. Su Luo was shocked enough to jump up. A kind of drug like that actually existed? After taking it, you could see the internal composition of a source stone. How could such a drug that defied nature exist on this earth? Wasn't that against the natural laws of the heavens? Old Chen looked at Su Luo dully and said, "The most mystical part doesn't reside in its effect, but lies in the fact that since then, the Chen family had passed on this ability through their bloodline. Moreover, every directly related descendant all have the ability to see through the heavens." Then, Su Luo became even more incredulous. How powerful of an evildoer was Elder Zihua? He could actually. Subsequently, old Chen's expression gradually became bleak. In this world, such a nature-defying drug fundamentally should not have existed. Therefore, the Chen family was doomed through time to suffer the recoil from this drug. Recoil? Su Luo was puzzled. The offspring of every generation from the Chen family must serve as Elder Zihua's disciple or descendant's side for all generations without ever betraying them. Old Chen paused at every word, clearly stating the reasons. If the Chen family don't serve at their side, alas, they can't live past 100 years old. How could it be like this? Su Luo was unable to understand. "Miss, you don't have to believe me, however. My grandfather and father both really did die on their 100th birthday. There has been no exception to this rule." Old Chen's turbid eyes became dim for a split second. He then added another sentence. "At the time of their death, their faces were serene without a touch of bruising. Just like that, they died in their sleep. It was exactly the same as what our ancestors told us." Seeing Su Luo's eyes wide open in disbelief, a trace of a wry smile flashed through old Chen's eyes. "Therefore, the greatest wish for every generation in the Chen family is to find Elder Zihua, or the person who inherited his legacy, and afterwards to serve by their side." "But," Su Luo somewhat frustratedly and helplessly motioned with her hands. "Right now, I'm not even an apothecary. I don't have the ability to undo the curse on your body." No need to undo the curse." Old Chen kneeled down on both knees with a solemn expression saying, "I beseech you, if the miss could accept old Chen, then old Chen already couldn't thank you enough." Chapter 238. Speechless on the spot 11. When she saw old Chen who could easily intimidate Lu Qingfeng kneeling in front of her, momentarily Su Luo's mood was somewhat complex. If it was really like what old Chen said, wouldn't it be that she had obtained a huge helping hand for free? Old Chen's influence and strength were not low. However, Su Luo still had a small point that she couldn't figure out, so she straight out just asked, "How did you recognize that I was the one who inherited Elder Zihua's legacy?" She consciously felt that she herself hadn't revealed any flaws. Old Chen smiled bitterly as he handed over a piece of jade, saying, "Back then Elder Zihua had left behind a piece of jade. He said that if the person who inherited his legacy came, this piece of jade would shine. When Miss arrived, this piece of jade really did shine. There was really something this mystical. Su Luo took the offered blue jade pendant. She looked at it from left to right, up and down, carefully taking its measure. No matter how she looked at it, it looked like a regular jade pendant. Su Luo returned the jade pendant. Then you should carefully put it away. No, it's better if the miss takes good care of it. Old Chen's face had an emotionally moved color. Since I have already found the miss, this jade pendant is now useless to me. Maybe it will be useful for the Mississippi. Since Su Luo couldn't decline it, she had no alternative but to accept. These source stones were intentionally saved for the master, and I hope the master won't dislike them. Old Chen had already voluntarily changed the forms of addressing people. His manner now also carried a touch of respect. Okay. Su Luo didn't try to refuse, and very naturally received his good intentions. Since Old Chen was already one of her people, Su Luo also didn't keep him in the dark. In front of him she waved her hand, and took all the source stones into her space. Old Chen's pupils contracted, incredulously staring at Su Luo. Space mage? Master is actually a space mage. Su Luo smiled faintly and glanced at him. Is there a problem? No problem, absolutely no problem. I merely didn't expect that master is the rarely seen space mage. Old Chen still somewhat disbelievingly said. To be capable of obtaining Elder Zihua's legacy, the person must be of wood and fire dual elements. However, his family's master in addition to these two was also a space mage that was almost extinct on this continent. When all was said and done, this was how formidable of a talent. Truly, just thinking about it, he was filled with expectation. Originally, Old Chen had felt a little bit uncomfortable at having to serve such a young Mississippi, but after Su Luo revealed this skill, he wholeheartedly acknowledged her as his master. He was looking forward to seeing what height his family's little master would reach in the future when she grew up. After she had sent all the source stones into her space, Su Luo placed the little divine dragon in her space to peel out the crystal stones. Su Luo along with Old Chen walked out of the basement. Arriving at the front courtyard, she found that it was clamorous and bustling with excitement. It seemed very lively. Among the crowd, Lu Chengfeng was standing there dumbstruck. He dumbfoundedly stared at the source stone in front of him. He couldn't believe what he was seeing was real. Cowpie crystal stone. He actually spent 100,000 gold coins to buy back a piece of cyan-colored cowpie crystal stone. One was worth merely a few thousand gold, and the other was worth 100,000 gold. The gap between the two prices was too big. It was so big that Lu Chengfeng was unable to react. How can it be like this? How can it be a cowpie crystal stone? Lu Chengfeng's pair of bloodshot eyes rigidly fixated on that fragment. His mouth mumbled words directed at himself. His person was almost entirely stunned into a stupor. The few people surrounding him continuously shook their heads. Some of them were glad, some sympathized with him, and still more ridiculed him. Didn't think this was actually a cowpie crystal stone. Fortunately, this old man didn't win the bid. Otherwise, I would have lost miserably right now. Old Li said with some lingering fear over this close call. Therefore, people would say when gambling with stones, one cut to poverty, one cut to riches, truly hard to tell. Chapter 239. Speechless on the spot 12. That's right, only this for 100,000 gold is really too high a price. You should know that even if it was an already cut-out cyan-colored crystal stone, according to the market price, it is only worth 50,000 gold. Right, this price is indeed ridiculously high. Only an idiot would offer this kind of high price. The most laughable thing was that in the end, he cut out a cowpie crystal stone. Everyone was acting as if they were a genius with hindsight. Everybody unceasingly commented, even though the horse had already bolted as they chased after the horse. However, these comments were like sharp thorns that stabbed at Lu Chengfeng's heart, making it hurt sorely time after time. No way, he must not go down like this. Didn't he still have a few pieces of source stones that he had bought? Those had all been snatched away from under that loathsome girl's nose. They were unlikely to be lacking. I certainly will cut out a high-quality crystal stone from them. Yes, cut. I must cut. Lu Qingfeng waved his hand and commandingly instructed. Take out the 7 pieces of source stones I bought before. This lord wants to continue cutting stones. He still wanted to cut some more? The surrounding people all started to whisper, but Lu Qingfeng ignored it all. Now he must cut out a cyan-colored crystal stone, otherwise, how could he explain this to his family? He had spent money as if it was running water. Today, in one day, he had spent about 150,000 gold coins. The first piece of source stone, with one cut straight down, nothing. The second piece of source stone, with one cut across, nothing. The third piece of source stone, with one vertical cut, nothing. The fourth piece of source stone, the seventh piece of source stone, was almost chopped into dust by Lu Qingfeng, but it was still as empty as before. It didn't contain even a tiny bit of crystal stone. At this moment, Lu Qingfeng was about to go insane. 150,000 gold coins. An entire 150,000 gold coins. He had spent all of it and got nothing, but instead had watched it float away like water. A tiny piece of crystal stone. He couldn't obtain even a tiny bit of a red-colored crystal stone. At this moment, Lu Qingfeng's eyes were burning with rage. He nearly lost all rational thought. This was impossible. That loathsome girl at that time has clearly picked these after a long time. She even had a secretly delighted expression. And just at this time, Su Luo, accompanied by Old Chun, was slowly strolling towards there. Su Luo, in the position of a master, walked in front, while Old Chun exhibited the status of a servant, walking half a step behind her. This kind of order looked very odd to everyone who saw it. People who could come here, who didn't know Old Chun. Who didn't know that back then, he was the famous and brilliant king of crystal stones. Him being someone's servant, how could this be possible? Therefore, simply no one could guess the master and servant relationship between Su Luo and Old Chun. Lu Qingfeng didn't crazily rush towards them. Now his pair of red, bloodshot eyes had already gradually settled down. However, when he looked at Su Luo's back, that cold and shady expression was full of sinister light. The corner of his mouth was hooked into a strangely grim smile. He lifted his hand, beckoned over a servant, and muttered something into his ear. That servant accepted the order and quickly left. This entire process, Lu Qingfeng accomplished it very secretively. Almost no one was aware of this petty little act of his. Su Luo gave Su Xiaoyuan 10 gold coins, and smilingly said, "Take it, buy some good stuff for your mother and sister. Also don't deprive yourself either." Gold coins. Su Xiaoyuan excitedly looked at the 10 pieces of gold coins in his palm. His mouth was opened wide in disbelief. "Miss, didn't we originally agree on 10 copper coins? Your conduct and deeds today were worth this price. Accept it and don't let others steal it. At that time, your little body won't be able to take it back." Su Luo smilingly said, But I didn't do anything today." Su Xiaoyuan very dismayingly said, "Today, besides taking the miss to Uncle Chen's place, he didn't do anything else. He received so many gold coins for no reason. He was ashamed to accept it." Chapter 240, Speechless on the Spot 13. "No, today you took me to Old Chen's place. This matter alone was worth the price." Su Luo smilingly said. With regards to Su Luo, this was merely 10 gold coins. Having met Old Chun, the king of crystal stones, this matter was of even greater benefit to herself. If it were not for Su Xiaoyuan leading the way, she herself wouldn't have come to the door of Old Chen's residence. But Su Xiaoyuan was still afraid to accept it. Without waiting for Su Xiaoyuan to decline, Su Luo glanced at him sideways. "Rest assured, in the future I still have stuff that I want you to do. You have already completed your task today. Quickly go home." In the future, there were still areas where she will need to employ Su Xiaoyuan. After she finished speaking, Su Luo left without looking back. This was because she could feel a pair of boiling hot eyes that were fixed on her back. After turning east then west, and then into a dead-end alley, Su Luo halted her footsteps. She turned around and smilingly said, "Friends from the Lu family, are you personally sending me home? Now that I have arrived at my family's doorway, do you want to come in and drink a cup of tea?" Once Su Luo finished speaking, abruptly 2 figures appeared in front of her. These two individuals had extremely cold expressions. Their eyes were full of murderous light. Step by step, they walked towards Su Luo, until finally with one on the left and another on the right, they sandwiched her in the middle. You guys want to kill me? Why? Su Luo lifted an eyebrow at the two people. You know too much. The very tall guy actually let out a cold snort. Voluntarily hand over the cyan-colored crystal stone, and we'll leave you a whole corpse otherwise. The shorter guy now let out a cold humph sound. These two's appearance were very nondescript. Placed in a crowd, they would blend in, making it extremely difficult to find them. However, their strength was not low. They were actually at the 3rd rank. Su Luo was only at the peak of the 2nd rank. If both were to attack her at the same time, then she absolutely wasn't their match. The only way was to kill off one of them first, then make other plans. In a short time, Su Luo had thought up of a good plan. She faintly smiled at the shorter guy. Want the cyan-colored crystal stone? What's so difficult about it? Catch before she finished speaking. A small piece of crystal stone streaked through the air, shooting towards a distant place. This toss contained all of Su Luo's strength. Therefore that piece of crystal stone flew very, very far. Su Luo had thrown it in the direction where the shorter guy was. So the shorter guy rapidly ran backwards trying to catch that piece of crystal stone. How could the taller guy just sit around and watch? His silhouette was like a phantom, as he also threw himself into chasing after the crystal stone. However, he had overlooked that the corner of a certain person's mouth had lifted into a weird smile. Just when the taller guy's figure passed by Su Luo's side, suddenly a hand imprint appeared out of the blue right in front of him. This large, stable, and steady dimensional imprint smashed toward the taller guy's head. The unguarded taller guy's head was struck in a flash. He only felt that everything had turned black in front of his eyes. His entire person became somewhat dizzy. Even though this hand imprint hadn't caused him any real injuries, this sudden attack, however, had made him pause for just a split second. Just in this split second, a glaringly cold dagger appeared in Su Luo's hand. While you are sick, I'll take your life. This phrase had always been one of Su Luo's principles. While the taller guy was still dizzy and confused, the dagger in Su Luo's hand unhesitantly sliced toward the vital place on his throat. Immediately, a band of dark red blood burst out from his throat. Ah! The taller guy looked on helplessly as a mist of blood flew out from his throat. He was incredulous as he used his own hand to touch it. With this touch, he froze like a block of ice. He felt his own life was now flowing quickly away. There wasn't enough time to even do a countdown. Chapter 241, Speechless on the Spot 14. His throat was cut, so he couldn't sound out half a word. He could only use a resentful and unreconciled gaze to stare at Su Luo. His body fell heavily backwards, producing a violent sound when it struck the ground. A 3rd-ranked martial artist, just like this, was killed by Su Luo's sneak attack. Third brother won. A loud shout coming from behind Su Luo could be heard. In a flash, that short guy rushed over, looking on with disbelief at his third brother who was on the ground, with blood gushing out of his throat. Loathsome girl, you dare to deceive me, and to also kill third brother. Go die. The short guy was extremely irate. His hands moved in a complicated fighting style, hacking towards Su Luo. It was combative, and each move was meant to take a life. Just now, the crystal stone Su Luo had tossed far away was simply not a cyan-colored one, but merely a red-colored crystal stone. However, it had successfully diverted the short guy away. Black fog shrouded the sky, covering Su Luo underneath it, letting out rumbling sounds. Just at this time, Su Luo made her move. A large gold-colored palm slapped towards the short guy's head. Just relying on this poor hand imprint technique. And you dare to come out, really disgraceful. The short guy didn't really think that Su Luo's great dimensional imprint was worthy in his eyes. His body only moved slightly, and he was able to avoid it. However, who would have thought that this was merely Su Luo's fake maneuver? Just at this time, a black shadow suddenly leaped towards the black-clothed man. He fiercely bit into the guy's leg. Ah! The short guy let out a tragic cry, because the little divine dragon was really too ruthless. Just that one bite of his had broken the short guy's leg in half. He was only left with one leg standing on the ground, resisting the sharp pain. The long sword in his hand harshly sliced at Su Luo. Today, even if he was to die here, he must first avenge third brother. Third brother absolutely must not just die in vain like this. However, what made the short guy almost pass out was that he never anticipated that the speed of the puppy that bit him would be this fast. He wasn't aware when that little body had landed on the long sword he sent out. Just when the long sword was about to land on the opponent's body, the long sword had already disappeared. How could the long sword just suddenly disappear? The short guy's eyes were wide open in disbelief. He was totally and completely unable to imagine this. What did he just see? He actually saw a puppy laying on the sword and swallowing the long sword in a split second. Just when the short guy was at a loss, Su Luo's great dimensional imprint once again smashed down from above. Bang! The unprepared short guy's head was split open, blood violently bursting out. Now the short guy seemed to have recovered his thoughts. Even though he had difficulty moving about freely, however, his movements were still nimble. He took out a murderous-looking dagger from his boot and thrusted it towards Su Luo. Just at this time, the little divine dragon that was standing on Su Luo's shoulder puffed out a mouthful of dragon's breath. Good. Su Luo let out an enthusiastic shout. Once a dragon's breath went over, would there be anything left of this short guy? Didn't you see the butterfly that was turned into ashes by a puff of the little divine dragon's breath? However, in the next second, Su Luo's smile froze on her mouth. What was the little divine dragon doing? How was it that this time, what he sprayed out wasn't fire, but was water? Having his head sprayed with water, the short guy stared at the little puppy, as if looking at a ghost. He really did not understand just what kind of creature it was. What other mystical thing was on this creature's body? Could it be that the little puppy was also a water element practitioner? Was this still a dog? It simply had become a mythical spirit. At this moment, Su Luo almost lifted her face up to shout at the sky. Please! Puffing out water is useless. You must use fire. 1. Literally translated as old 3. I translated here as third brother, because that should be their relationship. So he should be the older brother, not necessarily blood-related, could be just good friends or had the same teacher. Chapter 242. Fleeing from the city center. 1. The little divine dragon's mouth turned into a somewhat chagrined pout. He hadn't expected it either. Obviously he wanted to puff out some fire. Who knew he would spit out water instead? Even if he wanted to control it, he wasn't able to control it. A mythical beast. This is a mythical beast. Definitely a mythical beast. Suddenly, the short guy appeared as if he had discovered a huge secret and started to yell out loud in excitement. Abruptly, he came to his senses and glared at Su Luo with his cold and gloomy eyes. Since it's this way, then I'll let you live an extra day. Because of the sudden appearance of an unaccounted for mythical beast from out of nowhere, the short guy wasn't certain he could kill the opponent under these circumstances, and to also snatch away the mythical beast. The most dependable method was to bring this news back and let the leader deal with it. If the leader knew there was such a mythical beast, presumably he would be extremely happy. The short guy's heart was full of elation. The short guy had barely finished speaking before his body was like an arrow shot out of a bow, flying forward rapidly. Absolutely must not let him escape. Otherwise, this will cause trouble to no end. A touch of uneasiness appeared in Su Luo's heart. The opponent knew about the little divine dragon's existence. If this news were to spread out, it would be very troublesome for her. Then in the future, she wouldn't have any peaceful days thinking up to here. A desire to commit murder appeared in Su Luo's eyes, which shot out a cold aura. Swoosh! Su Luo's speed reached her limit. The dagger in her hand held high as she threw it at the short guy's back, trying to kill him with one hit. However, the disparity between their levels in cultivation became obvious at this time. The short guy seemed to have grown eyes behind his back. His body rapidly leaned to the left, easily avoiding this move. The dagger fell to the ground with a thump sound. The short guy's thoughts returned. He contemplatively and disdainfully said, "Want to kill your daddy? In the next life." Ha 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 ha. Once he finished speaking, before he could turn around and continue running. All of a sudden, a frightening thunderbolt struck down from the empty and clear sky. Just by chance, it struck him on the head. In a split second, the short guy appeared to have been fixed in place. His body was rigid like a wooden stake. Originally, the short guy would have been fine. However, who told him to have been covered with water sprayed on his head by the little divine dragon? At this moment, his entire body was soaking wet, from top to bottom. Therefore, when the scorching lightning hit him, his whole person was electrocuted. He began to shake from head to toe. Moreover, black smoke puffed out continuously from his head. Good. This is great. Quickly continue to release more. Su Luo originally was worried. Seeing this, she immediately became excited. She urged the little divine dragon, while cheering him on. Yes, that's right. Just a moment ago, that thunderbolt was shot by the little divine dragon on behalf of the heavens, as punishment for the short guy's hubris. In fact, after hearing Su Luo's words, the little divine dragon wanted to spit out fire. Who knew that he would have no control and carelessly spit out a thunderbolt? Who told him to be a baby dragon? Human infants also have control issues with using the toilet and whatnot. Him spitting out the wrong element was also normal. Originally, he had still been harshly blaming himself. Who would have thought that by a stroke of luck, he successfully electrocuted the short guy? This time, he truly made a profit in the end. Seeing the villain frothing at the mouth with his entire body shaking, the little divine dragon was exceedingly excited. His mouth started to continue spit out elements nonstop. One moment it was water, then it was fire. And another minute, out came a thunderbolt. One could only see the crackle and rattling. Fire sparks flew in all directions endlessly. And now, the short guy's entire person seemed to be convulsing. His body was unable to stop shaking. The foam in his mouth spurted out continuously, unable to be suppressed. Every single hair on his head stood straight up towards the sky. His entire body was charred black like charcoal, and one almost couldn't make out his real features. Today's short guy had encountered a lifetime's worth of blood feud and bad luck. He could have chased after and tried to kill anybody else, but he had to go offend Su Luo. Offending Su Luo could be forgiven, unfortunately, either through good luck or bad luck. He ran into the little divine dragon that was flipping out. Therefore, he was doomed to a tragic ending. Chapter 243. Fleeing from the city center. 2. At last, the short guy's entire body was charred black like a piece of charcoal. He stiffly fell straight to the ground. His entire body broke into fragments. Finally got rid of this short guy too. The huge boulder pressing down on Su Luo's heart finally dropped to the ground. Today's result was really thanks to the little divine dragon's help. If it was only her, this short guy would very likely have escaped. Su Luo, with lingering fear in her heart, decided that she must cultivate her martial arts to higher levels without delay. Otherwise, in the future, there will be times when she will suffer losses. In the future, the enemies will be more and more formidable. Su Luo searched the short guy's body and took back her red-colored crystal stone. Soon after, she rewarded the little divine dragon the red-colored stone as a snack. The little divine dragon's performance was very good today. She really ought to award him properly. She tidied up the scene, and after having swept away any traces she may have left behind, Su Luo carried the little divine dragon and walked quickly towards Su Manor. She had been out for a long time and didn't know what the inside of Su Manor looked like right now. She still remembered at the time when she had left, Su Qing's fierce panther had gone mad. It had charged around violently in Su Manor and destroyed a countless number of structures. It had sent the entire Su Manor into turmoil. She didn't know if it was now under control or not. If the great show was still playing, then it would be very amusing. She wouldn't mind participating in it once again to kick it up a notch. While thinking this, Su Luo was humming a ditty as she took relaxed steps towards Su Manor. Just when she was about 100 meters away from Su Manor's entrance, Su Luo suddenly had a bad premonition. She started to slow down her footsteps. Stemming from her previous instincts as an assassin, Su Luo discovered that she was very unfortunately being followed by someone. She wasn't sure when the opponent started to follow her, But Su Luo was certain that the martial arts level of the person following behind far exceeded her own. Fortunately, she hadn't taken a step into Su Manor. Otherwise, her own identity as Su Manor's fourth miss, the good-for-nothing, would have been exposed. The hands she used to hold the little divine dragon tightened slightly. Seeing the majestic and formidable stone lions guarding at Su Manor's gate, Su Luo's footstep did not stop. She didn't even turn her head as she continued to move forward. It was as if she didn't have any relationship with Su Manor. She couldn't reveal her identity as Su Manor's fourth miss. She could not let it be exposed right now. Moreover, Su Luo really wanted to know who was the person following her. Was this person part of the same group as the two guys who tried to kill her just now? Su Luo had been walking at an unhurried pace. The person behind her also followed at a distance that was not too close nor too far. It seemed like he wasn't going to get closer to rob her. Along the way, Su Luo attempted many times to shake off the opponent. She used the techniques for countering being followed from her previous life. However, regretfully the level of disparity was too large. She simply was unable to shake off the figure following her. What should she do now? She couldn't fight the opponent, nor was she able to shake him off. Su Luo's lowered eyes flashed with a chilling cold expression. Ahead of her was East Street, part of the city center. People were coming and going on this street, in an endless flowing stream. All kinds of calls for selling their bodies rose and fell in succession. This place was exceptionally noisy. East Street had the city's biggest guest house. When Su Luo saw this, crafty rays of light passed through her eyes. She held the little divine dragon and entered the guest house. With a composed expression, she called over the concierge and paid for a room. After entering the guest room, Su Luo locked the door. After putting the little divine dragon into her space, she quickly took out a set of men's clothing and changed into it. Simultaneously, she also stood in front of the mirror and started to use makeup to change her appearance. In a short time, the originally yellow waxy complexion of a young woman quickly changed into an average-looking young male. One could see he was wearing a light blue robe, with ordinary looks. Placed into a crowd, he would be drowned out. Even if you wanted to find him, it would be very difficult. Su Luo was very satisfied with the reflection in the mirror. She carefully examined herself one last time. After she couldn't find any faults, she started her plan. Chapter 244. Fleeing from the city center 3. Su Luo didn't go out from the front door. Rather, she opened a window. She leaped from her window to the opposite room about 6 meters away. Her skills were agile with nimble movements. Her actions were natural and unforced, flowing smoothly. A scholar lived in the room opposite of her. Now, he was rotating his head in a circular motion while reading a book of history out loud, completely unaware that a person had burst into his room. Su Luo softened her footsteps, noiselessly making a detour around the scholar. Afterwards, with a calm expression, she opened the door of the room and walked out. During this process, she was at ease, as if strolling through her own rear garden. The martial artist keeping a watch at Su Luo's door was completely unaware that Su Luo had already left. He was like before, with both hands holding a sword, keeping watch as still as a boulder. After about a quarter of an hour later, Lu Qingfeng led a crowd of people over in a grandiose fashion. With one foot, he kicked open the door of her room and discovered that the person had already disappeared. Lu Qingfeng was so furious that he almost stamped his feet. One hand slapped towards the guy who had followed Su Luo before. "Moron! Didn't you say you followed her here? Where is the person? Where is she?" In that loathsome girl's hands was a cyan-colored crystal stone. Moreover, today, he had been cheated repeatedly by her. He wasn't about to let this account go. He definitely wouldn't let her escape just like this. The person who was previously following Su Luo was called Lu San. He was the Lu family's high-ranking bodyguard. He looked at the empty room in disbelief, and at a loss said, "Young master, before that loathsome girl had really stayed in this room. I merely didn't expect that girl to be this cunning, to even slip away unnoticed." However, when did that loathsome girl slip away? Slip away? Hee hee. She really believes that she could slip away? A cold smile appeared at the corner of Lu Qingfeng's mouth. With a wave of his hand, a servant immediately came forth, carrying a soft-furred fox dog. Lu Qingfeng took out a single strand of hair and let the fox dog sniff it. He also gave a single medicinal pill for the fox dog to swallow. Finally, he laughed evilly while patting its head. Be obedient, quickly go find this person for this lord. After you find her, I will reward you well. That single strand of hair was one he had pulled from Su Luo's head when she wasn't paying attention. Because he didn't pluck it out from the root, so Su Luo simply didn't discover it. In fact, since the beginning, he hadn't thought to let Su Luo leave. The fox dog before everyone's eyes couldn't be bought for 1,000 gold. Its strength lay in its very sharp sense of smell. After eating the smell-enhancing pill, a fox dog's sense of smell would be increased by 10-fold. And now, because Lu Qingfeng wanted to catch Su Luo, he had actually fed the spirit fox dog a smell-enhancing pill that was extremely hard to come by. It could clearly be seen how great his determination to catch Su Luo was. After the fox dog devoured that smell-enhancing pill in one mouthful, its very small body ran all over the place in the room, seeming as if it was constantly looking for something. Suddenly, one could only see its small body launch towards the window facing this room. It really did find Su Luo's escape route. Give chase. Lu Qingfeng's mouth hooked into an evil smile. He waved his hand and everyone immediately followed behind him. This grandiose crowd chased after the fox dog. On the street, having thrown off the person following her, Su Luo hadn't returned to Su Manor in a rush. Her right now just so happened to be leisurely strolling in the street, enjoying the city center of this world. All of a sudden, she sensed danger approaching. Moreover, it was getting closer and closer. She turned her head and looked back. She immediately thought, not good. With just one glance, she saw Lu Qingfeng bringing a group of strong and menacing people and rushing towards her. Also running in front of everyone was a small fox dog. Originally, Su Luo was very calm, because now she did not look the same as before. Even if she stood in front of Lu Qingfeng, he might not be able to recognize her. Chapter 245, Fleeing from the City Center 4. But that fox dog's eyes were fixed on her and dashing towards her, this posture. Clearly, it recognized her and was rushing straight at her. Su Luo's heart abruptly jumped. Although she didn't know the reason, only that the fox dog had identified her. And that was a fact. If it was only Lu Qingfeng alone, then she could still risk a direct fight. However now, Lu Qingfeng had obviously come prepared. At his side, he brought a countless number of experts. She herself was unaccompanied. How could she contend and win against him? What's more, in this kind of situation, even sneak attacks or feints were useless. At such a critical juncture, there was no benefit to thinking too much. The only way out was to run. Run past the danger this time first, then discuss things after. Now Su Luo couldn't even describe how wronged and stifled her heart felt. No matter how she analyzed it, she couldn't figure out why even after she had changed her clothes and altered her appearance, Lu Qingfeng was still able to track her down. Thinking along this line, the 2 times she was tailed before should also have been the work of Lu Qingfeng. Su Luo surreptitiously clenched her fists tightly. This person truly wouldn't just disappear, his influence still lingered. Wait until there was an opportunity, then she must get rid of him. Otherwise he would cause trouble to no end. Su Luo ran as if she was flying. Her body moved fast like lightning. Yet behind her, Lu Qingfeng and his group of experts pursued relentlessly, unwilling to let her go. The chase became closer and closer. Looking on as it happened, the distance between both sides was pulled closer, drawing nearer. The originally bustling and lively East Street's main road, because of this dramatic pursuit, was now thrown into disorder, with people sent flying and hopping about. It was a complete mess. Everyone was afraid of being dragged in, and tried to keep away or flee. Inwardly, Su Luo's heart was anxious. Not good. If she didn't make some changes, sooner or later they would catch up to her. If Lu Qingfeng merely wanted the cyan-colored crystal stone, then that's okay. However, he had mustered such a large force. This clearly meant that he fancied her as a cash cow. If she was captured by him, then very likely, she wouldn't have any good days to live in the future. Cold dread flashed across Su Luo's eyes. All of a sudden, she saw not far from her. A horse carriage was dashing over here. Dragon-scaled horse. Immediately, Su Luo's heart rejoiced. What did the dragon-scaled horse represent? Su Luo understood this more than any other person. At this time, should she loudly appeal to Nangong Luyan for help? No way. That would lower her self-worth too much. Su Luo's eyes flashed. She was set on her decision. Before she had spared no effort and tried everything. She absolutely must not request his help. Owing debt to others was tolerable. If she was to owe Nangong Luyan a personal favor, then when the time came, she would have to pay with her own flesh. What would she do then? While Su Luo's heart was fluctuating, she had already made a decision. Under the cover of a wall, she waited until the dragon-scaled horse rushed past. Then, she quietly hooked onto the carriage's wall. She turned around and secretly slipped underneath the carriage. Both of her hands were extended and stuck to the red sandalwood boards on the bottom of the carriage. Her body was parallel to the bottom of the carriage, and Lu Qingfeng, who was pursuing closely behind her, unwilling to let her go, didn't expect that in a blink of an eye, not a trace of Su Luo could be seen. Immediately, his expression became exceptionally ugly. A servant with good eyesight promptly went to stand next to him. Lowering his voice, in Lu Qingfeng's ears he said, "Second young master." This servant saw that youngster hide in the horse carriage just now. "Then why haven't you stopped that horse carriage without delay? Want to die?" Lu Qingfeng was angered so much that he directly hit him with his whip. "But that is..." Before the servant's words were completed, he was slapped back by Lu Qingfeng. "Regardless of whose horse carriage it is, you must keep it here for this lord. Did you hear me loud and clear? No matter whose horse carriage." The last sentence, Lu Qingfeng had said while grinding his teeth and emphasizing every word. That cyan-colored crystal stone, with regards to the Lu residence, was really too important. Just now, Elder Lu had passed on a message stating that he must get a hold of that piece of cyan-colored crystal stone. He should not spare any means to get it. Therefore, with the support of Elder Lu, Lu Qingfeng's confidence now was naturally quite excessive. Chapter 246, Fleeing from the City Center 5. That servant who was slapped by Lu Qingfeng now really wouldn't dare to disobey. He could only go and flag down the dragon-scaled horse. "Stop! Quickly stop this horse carriage." The Lu residence's servant, with both hands placed at his waist and an unafraid-to-die attitude, stood directly in the middle of the street to try to stop the dragon-scaled horse. But how could the dragon-scaled horse be that easy to stop? Seeing a person who didn't know what's good for him blocking the road ahead, the bold and powerful dragon-scaled horse raised its pair of front hooves and unhesitantly kicked at that person. Ouch! Immediately, the body of that Lu residence servant was kicked, flying high into the sky and making an arc in midair. Finally, with a thump sound, he fell to the ground. When he landed on the ground, his body had already broken into pieces that were beyond recognition. Gasp! Just in this split second, the originally bustling and noisy broad street became silent. Without exception, everyone inhaled a mouthful of cold air. They stared at the sparking scales covering the entire body of the dragon-scaled horse that was shining under the sunlight with stupefied expressions. Lu Qingfeng was also dumbfounded by this fast-changing scene that arose abruptly, but in the next instant, he very quickly returned to his senses. He took a deep breath and started to curse and spew out abuse. However, he only saw the dragon-scaled horse carriage driver's unsympathetic face. He coldly swept Lu Qingfeng a glance. Daring to block the dragon-scaled horse, he deserves to die. Underneath the carriage, Su Luo immediately rolled her eyes. Ling Feng, in front of Nangong Luyan, was as obedient as a kitten. She didn't expect that in front of other people, he had such an awe-inspiring authoritative manner. Dragon-scaled horse? Lu Qingfeng's heart was given a huge shock. Just now, he finally recognized that the horse standing proudly in front of him was none other than His Highness Prince Jin's dragon-scaled horse. Surveying this entire world, this unique and unparalleled dragon-scaled horse was a symbol of His Highness Prince Jin's noble identity. Lu Qingfeng's breath was suddenly stuck in his throat. It couldn't go up or come down. He could only choke on it, until he was flushed red in the face. Just a moment ago, he really had, to actually let someone obstruct His Highness Prince Jin's dragon-scaled horse. Very quickly, Lu Qingfeng returned to his senses. His face had a fawning expression as he moved up to the carriage, brimming with enthusiasm. He had a flattering smile on his face. Didn't expect that His Highness Prince Jin is here. Yes, this humble servant was too impulsive. Hope Your Highness Prince Jin won't take offense. Please by all means do not take offense. At this moment, Lu Qingfeng's posture was lowered subserviently. Inside the carriage was quiet. Not a trace of sound could be heard. However, there was a kind of oppressive pressure that people couldn't ignore coming from within. He hoped it would be so. Lu Qingfeng's heart was trembling in fear. He was scraping and bowing, with cold sweat constantly coming out of his forehead. His body was shuddering nonstop. After a seemingly long time, only then did a muffled, demonically charming voice come from within the carriage. What are you people busy doing? This sound was mild and gentle like nature. It was unhurried, demonically charming and deep. Everyone without exception was speculating. With such a demonically charming and languid sound, what kind of outrageous face would go with this voice? It was a pity that His Highness Prince Jin had always stayed in and gone out without much fanfare. Thus, very few people ever saw his real appearance. At this moment, everyone present at the scene were all holding their breath, watching with rapt attention. They were afraid that if they spit out a mouthful of impure air, they would profane the one and only incomparable person in this world, His Highness Prince Jin. The people around couldn't help but to voluntarily bend at the waist and kneel down in front of His Highness Prince Jin, who dared to be bold enough to have their head high and chest out. Prince Jin would look at the world disdainfully from the corner of his eyes, like a lord looking over the lands he reigned over. Even when he was merely sitting within a horse carriage, that formidable, domineering, kingly aura was also impossible for people to ignore. Lu Qingfeng did his best to restrain the panic in his heart, lowered his voice and said, "Reporting back to Your Highness Prince Jin, a thief entered our Lu manor. We lost an extremely precious treasure. This humble servant, under the order of the family's lord and master, is tracking down to arrest the thief. I never expected that this would trouble His Highness Prince Jin." Thieves? Inside the carriage, the corner of His Highness Prince Jin's mouth hooked into a thoughtful smile. His entire person looked very indolent. Chapter 247, Fleeing from the City Center 6. Yes. Lu Qingfeng, 1, added more exaggerated details as he spoke. This thief stole away the treasured cyan-colored crystal stone from our Lu manor, so this one is duty-bound to arrest them. Also, I hope Your Highness Prince Jin will help out by allowing us to continue. Such a great Lu manor could allow a single burglar to steal away the manor's treasure. TSK. Lu manor's strength has actually weakened to such a degree. This single, offhand sentence from His Highness Prince Jin's was like a slap that struck heavily on Lu Qingfeng's body. Lu Qingfeng's face reddened and he stammered speechlessly. The present him was extremely embarrassed. Return. His Highness Prince Jin commanded casually. The him right now was not only arrogantly aloof, but also overbearing. The dragon-scaled horse neighed. Both of its hooves surged forward as it dashed off. Yet right at this moment, that little fox dog was recklessly jumping around on top of the carriage, as if something in there was attracting it. Young master, we searched all of the surrounding area, and found no trace of that person. At this time, a servant from Lu Manor returned to Lu Qingfeng's side, and reported in a whisper. Lu Qingfeng watched the constantly pouncing fox dog, and his eyes flashed with a complicated light. It was not difficult to guess that if the person could not be found in the surroundings, it was because the person was in His Highness Prince Jin's carriage. But it was His Highness Prince Jin. Due to the instinctive reverence for Prince Jin, Lu Qingfeng's heart soured. But then, he suddenly recalled that his family's great-grandpa's breakthrough into the 7th rank was already in sight. At that time, he wouldn't necessarily be worse than Prince Jin in strength. By then, they would not need to treat His Highness Prince Jin with such reverence, fear and trepidation. Moreover, he must obtain this cyan-colored crystal stone. Lu Qingfeng's revolving thoughts had already reached a decision. He strode forward a step, barring the dragon-scaled horse's way, and loudly proclaimed, "Your Highness Prince Jean, that thief might have hidden on your carriage. In consideration for your safety, you should still disembark for us to examine your carriage thoroughly, lest the thief cause you harm." Lu Qingfeng brought a bunch of martial artists who were from his side. The group of people stood fixed in place ahead, encircling the dragon-scaled horse in the middle. Even though his tone was polite, he assumed a forceful attitude, coercing His Highness Prince Jean to get out of his carriage. Within the carriage, His Highness Prince Jin's dark red thin lips raised faintly, carrying an air of unbridled arrogance. He gave a deep and demonically charming chuckle. "Lu family's boy, are you threatening this king?" Lu Qingfeng's heart was unsettled, but he carried on with the same expression, laughing along with him. "I don't dare, wouldn't dare. This one only wanted to invite His Highness Prince Jean out of his carriage to rest a little. This will give this one a chance to offer your highness a cup of tea. How about it?" His Highness Prince Jean did not speak. It seemed very quiet inside the carriage. After a long while, a mild humph sound came from within the carriage. Only a light humph intimidated everyone at the scene. No one dared to make a sound, and everyone had their heads lowered in fear and trepidation, including Lu Qingfeng. "You still insist?" His Highness Prince Jin's voice was natural, indolent yet bearing a chill, demonically refined and unfathomably enigmatic. "Yes, will your Highness Prince Jean please get out of the carriage?" Lu Qingfeng clenched his fists and forced his own legs not to tremble. His Highness Prince Jean seemed to find this situation very laughable. He raised his voice and uttered a laugh. "Drink tea? Chuckle. Ling Feng. Offer them some of Prince Jean Royal Manor's blood tea to drink, see if it suits their taste." "Yes." Ling Feng's reply was crisp and immediate. Before his words even reached them, his long sword was already out of its scabbard. Su Luo, who was hiding underneath the carriage, did not know what maneuver Ling Feng attacked with. However, she could still hear the unending sounds of the long sword slicing through the air, constantly spewing out a blood mist. The broken limbs were like debris flying in all directions, along with mournful, shrill screams crying out nonstop. In fact, all of this actually took place within a split second. 1. Noticed by Nivrem. Lu Qingfeng's given name in Chinese sounds the same as Lu becoming insane, which is what we see in this chapter. Who in their right mind stops that guy's car? I mean carriage. Chapter 248. Fleeing from the city center 7. However, time seemed pass very slowly. By the time Su Luo's consciousness returned, the fight had already ended. Lu Qingfeng's head, face and body were all covered in blood. His eyes were lifeless. His hair was in a mess and his clothing was ragged. Him right now looked extremely pathetic, simply unbearable for people to look at. He was the only one left standing from Lu Manor, and also the only one that was not injured. Yet, the unharmed him now seemed to be in a more horrible state than those that were injured. He could be seen standing there in a daze, stupidly staring at the carriage. Both of his eyes were opened wide like circles, as if his whole person had become an idiot. No matter what, he was unable to regain consciousness. In an instant, all the experts he brought along were disposed of. Until the very end, he still didn't know how the opponent attacked. How could it be like this? The most terrifyingly thing was that the one who took action this time was merely His Highness Prince Jin's personal bodyguard. It was said that His Highness Prince Jin's strength was even more formidable, more terrifying, and even more profoundly mysterious. As legends had it, His Highness Prince Jin's most terrifying trait was not his martial arts, but rather his temper. Legends had it, His Highness Prince Jean was temperamental and capricious, cruel and tyrannical. One moment smiling as if it was clear skies and light breezes, then the next second, his long sword was already unsheathed. Legends told that there were only times when His Highness Prince Jean was too lazy to take action. There was no one he wouldn't dare to kill. Legends told that the martial world had countless legends regarding His Highness Prince Jean. He obviously knew it, yet he still deliberately violated them. He really was idiotic and thoroughly foolish. At this very moment, Lu Qingfeng regretted everything until his intestines turned green. Ling Feng slowly and methodically wiped clean the longsword in his hand. He glanced indifferently at Lu Qingfeng and said to His Highness Prince Jin within the carriage, "Your Highness, there is still one left alive." His Highness Prince Jin languidly inclined on the jade seat, fiddling with the white jade thumb ring in his hand, and leisurely spoke. "Leave it, he still has to return to Lu Manor to deliver the news." As if nobody else was around them, the master and servant's conversation almost made Lu Qingfeng roar in rage. He was not just any stray cat or dog. He was Lu Manor's second young master. The second young master born of the first wife. The second young master, who at this point in time was already a martial artist at the third rank. Could it be that in His Highness Prince Jin's eyes, he was no different from a commoner? In his eyes was he so intolerable? Lu Qingfeng restrained his anger until his face grew red. His gaze was fixated on the carriage. However, Ling Feng and the dragon-scaled horse did not even bother to glance at him, and they directly left. Even more so His Highness Prince Jin within the carriage, who had never revealed himself since the beginning. The streets were covered in a bloody mist, with a deathly silence all around. The surrounding people had all tried avoiding it by staying far away. Only Lu Qingfeng's dazed figure stood by his lonesome self. Lu Qingfeng recalled piece by piece of what had happened here. He still could not understand why. He had only wanted to invite His Highness Prince Jin to get off the carriage. Why did he decide to kill them all so mercilessly? Why? Did all these high-level experts from the Lu family die for nothing? And there was still that cyan-colored crystal stone. It definitely must not end up in His Highness Prince Jin's hands. Wasn't His Highness Prince Jin a 6th-rank martial artist? Their family's ancestor was also 6th rank, and might not necessarily lose to him. Thinking of this, Lu Qingfeng gathered his legs and ran towards Lu Manor. The dragon-scaled horse leisurely trotted on the road to Prince Jin's royal manor. Underneath the carriage, Su Luo finally released a relieved sigh. That annoying Lu Qingfeng was finally driven away. She finally escaped this crisis. Hiding under the carriage was never a long-term solution from the start. In addition, Nangong Luyan, if it was possible not to meet this person, all along, Su Luo did not want to see him. Su Luo had originally planned to soundlessly land on the ground, then wait for the dragon-scaled horse to leave before getting up to return to Su Manor. Though her idea seemed well developed, however in reality, it was full of holes. Chapter 249. Fleeing from the city center. 8. Presently, Su Luo was extremely dismayed to discover that her palms, which were tightly gripping the carriage shaft, were stuck. It was as if the bottom of this carriage had superglue, tightly sticking to her palms. No matter how much strength she used, her palms could not move. At this moment, Su Luo's heart was somewhat alarmed and fearful. What just happened? Just now when Ling Feng and Lu Manor's men were fighting, she obviously could still move her hands. Why couldn't she move it now? Moreover, it was not just both of her hands. Even her legs were as if they had grown from the bottom of the carriage, unable to move an inch, much less run away. Su Luo continued to struggle non-stop, twisting around in an attempt to break free. But all her efforts were futile. At this point, she really was starting to get anxious. In contrast to this, within the carriage, His Highness Prince Jin was lounging on the jade seat. His cascading black hair was as smooth as silk, loosely tied with a ribbon made of red silk. He was idly turning the pages of a book in his hand. It appeared as if he was thinking of something fun. His long, shapely eyebrows painted in jet black dye were like morning dew on silk threads. The corners of his lips suddenly hooked up into a bewitching smile that could steal a person's soul. It was as dazzling and eye-catching as the cherry blossoms in March. His well-defined and slender long fingers continuously tapped on the tabletop. His phoenix eyes were tilted up, with a flash of a playful smile passing through his gleaming eyes. Struggling to no avail for the entire trip, the dragon-scaled horse carried His Highness Prince Jin and Su Luo, who was beneath the carriage, back to Prince Jin's royal manor together. At the manor's entrance, His Highness Prince Jin stepped out of the carriage, and under the escort of a group of people, headed towards the inner courtyard. At this time, Su Luo suddenly was astonished to discover that she had recovered her normal ability to move around like before. Su Luo secretly considered, if she did not leave now, then she wait until when? If she waited until Nangong discovered her, then her situation would turn sour. Su Luo sneakily rolled out from underneath the carriage. Just as she got up and was about to flee, all of a sudden, His Highness Prince Jin turned around. His enchanting phoenix gaze burned into that furtive figure. Are you a newcomer? His Highness Prince Jin's voice was natural, not powerful, angry or intimidating. Hearing those words, Su Luo's body immediately froze on the spot. Fuck. Why must she be discovered at the last moment? How could she break away? However, Nangong didn't recognize her, right? Su Luo lowered her head. That's right, at this moment, she was disguised as a man. It was reasonable that Prince Jin would not recognize her. His Highness is asking you, are you a new servant recruited to the manor? Seeing Su Luo being slow in replying, Ling Feng coldly swept a glance at her. He stepped forward to grab Su Luo and delivered her before His Highness Prince Jin. Ling Feng's speed was as fast as the wind. The gap in their levels was too great. Su Luo really had no time to resist. Currently, Su Luo was mentally crying with resentment. No matter how uncomfortable she was feeling, on the surface, she still faked a submissive yes-man appearance. Su Luo groveled with fear and trepidation. Yes, this little one is new here, doing odd jobs in the kitchen. Just now went in the wrong direction. This little one will go back right now. Having said such, Su Luo's feet prepared to slip quickly away. Who knew? His Highness Prince Jin's black pupils shone with a dark light that rippled uncannily as he nonchalantly said, seeing that you appear to be quite clever from now on, stay by this king's side and personally serve me. Personally serve him? Su Luo was immediately dumbstruck. What was Nangong Luyan doing? Was he doing this on purpose? Did he see through her disguise and was deliberately playing with her? Why was she, who was doing just fine, suddenly was asked to personally wait on him? Ling Feng unhappily swept a glance at Su Luo. Why are you still dallying around? Don't delay, go catch up and wait upon him. But Su Luo thought it over again. Since her own face had been altered so much by right, Nangong Luyan should not have seen through her disguise. Chapter 250. Prince Jin's Royal Manor. 1. Then, in the end, did he or did he not see through her? Su Luo's inner conflict worsened until even her thoughts became knotted together. His Highness Prince Jin was encircled by more than 10 maids, who clustered around him, escorting him as he moved farther and farther away. On one hand, Su Luo was letting her imagination run wild, while on the other hand, she was depressedly holding her forehead. She slowly caught up to that huge procession. Ling Feng gripped his sword with both hands. His eyes were narrowed suspiciously as he sized up this young male servant. To be chosen by His Highness to serve at his side, this kid's future prospects would be limitless and immeasurable. It was just that. Ling Feng suddenly thought that this slippery and evasive-eyed lad felt very familiar. Along the way, Su Luo discovered that Prince Jin's royal manor was simply covered with gold and jade in glorious splendor, the ultimate luxurious and gorgeous palace. A new scenery every 10 steps, with a person at every 5 steps. The security of the manor was exceptionally tight. From her viewpoint, His Highness Prince Jin was dressed from head to toe in a loose gold-edged black gown, with an embroidered hem that swayed and moved like warm clouds. It looked like a foggy mist among the rays of light and shadows. It was the same as his status, so loftily up high, and held in awe by the people. Until this very moment, Su Luo finally realized that the man before her eyes was His Highness Prince Jin, a legendary noble existence that gathered innumerable praise, and was not the usual Nangong Luyan who smiled ingratiatingly and frivolously at her, who was always beseeching and chasing after her, disregarding his own dignity. From out of nowhere, Su Luo suddenly felt a sense of a small loss. The faint sourness passed by in a flash, such that even she wasn't able to catch it. After a short while of effort, everyone had escorted His Highness Prince Jin to his main hall. With the suede white jade flooring, imperial green jade bead curtains and red corals, as tall as adult men displayed on either side. The wealth displayed lent a magnanimous, luxurious atmosphere. His Highness Prince Jean took a step into his bedchambers. The serving maids immediately surrounded him, subserviently removing his crown. However, His Highness Prince Jin's deep commanding voice sounded. "Withdraw!" All the maids and bodyguards present knelt in obeisance to His Highness Prince Jean. Afterwards, they respectfully left, with a speed almost faster than a person could react to. At this time, Su Luo pressed herself against the wall, trying to minimize her presence. Hearing His Highness Prince Jin's order, she prepared to slip away the moment her toes touched the ground. However, His Highness Prince Jin's gaze, which was as deep as the heavens, steadily set on Su Luo. With a genteel and charming voice, his hand beckoned her over. "Come here." Su Luo's half-fleeing body abruptly paused and glared in annoyance. However, in someone else's territory, she had no choice but to bow her head. Su Luo stiffly turned her head around, and with her right hand pointed at herself, she squeezed out a false smile. "Your Highness, you called for me?" His Highness Prince Jean had a cold expression. With his long black hair pouring down over his shoulder like a waterfall, he gave off an uninhibited and elegant air. His head turned slightly. He cast his gaze towards Su Luo with eyes that were as bright as obsidian. His thin lips raised delicately. "What is your name?" What was her name? Su Luo grew somewhat vexed. In the end, had Nangong recognized her? Had he recognized her or not? Still need this king to repeat it once more? His Highness Prince Jin's pair of deep, beautiful eyes lazily watched her, carrying a touch of unbridled arrogance. No, it ought to be that he had not found out. Su Luo secretly encouraged herself. The normal Nangong Luyan was not like this. Having thought of this, Su Luo's heart steadied a little. She bowed her head, and lowered her eyelids, and thought for a long time. Then Su Luo, who was incompetent at coming up with names, softly replied. This humble one is Su Yun." Su Luo completely did not notice the flash of amusement in His Highness Prince Jin's eyes, while he was staring at her head. After a while, His Highness Prince Jean lightly coughed and finally spoke up once more. "The last name's not that good, but the given name is not bad." Chapter 251. Prince Jin's Royal Manner. 2. Su Luo covertly rolled her eyes. What did he mean by saying the name was not bad? Didn't it just have an additional yin letter? Look at that narcissistic manner of his. Without waiting for Su Luo to finish her mental criticism, His Highness Prince Jean once again threw out yet another bomb. "Help this king disrobe." "Ah!" Su Luo exclaimed in surprise. The cry sounded very abrupt. It caused His Highness Prince Jin's gorgeous pink lips to raise with amusement. He leaned down as his slender white finger lightly traced, and lifted Su Luo's fine white jaw. This frivolous action, when done by him, somehow held a kind of sensual charm born from natural talent. This could count as being molested, right? Su Luo blinked, momentarily stunned. His Highness Prince Jean met her gaze. His sparkling eyes were bright as the stars while the corners of his lips beguilingly tilted up into a captivating smile. "Are you afraid of this king?" When he spoke, the warmth of his breath lingered on her face before drifting to her sensitive earlobe. It gave her a kind of melting tickle that seemed to have even made her forelimbs itch. In the end, this sensation also seemed to have infected her heart. Before her eyes was that face of his with its utmost beauty, which could make anyone fall head over heels. It could even cause indignation among both humans and gods. Her nose was filled with his masculine smell, as if every breath she took his scent would permeate and fill every corner of her heart and chest. At this moment, Su Luo seemed to have fallen into a trance, with charming colors everywhere. It was as if there was tangled web spread in all four directions, and she was the sparrow stranded in the middle of it, constantly struggling to break free. However, this poor sparrow would struggle fruitlessly only to tragically discover that there was nowhere to escape to. Su Luo's mind was filled with wild ideas, and her small face turned crimson, as if it was extremely hot. From an angle unseen by anyone else, a satisfied smile flashed across the corner of His Highness Prince Jin's lips. "You're afraid of this king?" His voice remained natural, yet it seemed to have grown a little more human-like. with warmth and a touch of playfulness. How can that be possible? Su Luo instantly lifted her head, her small face fixed with determination. His Highness Prince Jin languidly and charmingly nodded before he stretched out his arms. His voice was melodious and clear. Help this king undress. Just why was this man so persistent like this? Su Luo silently cursed without end, yet powerlessly made a sound of agreement. She slumped as she moved a little closer to His Highness Prince Jin, and with a bitter face clumsily grasped the forefinger-width wide darkly embroidered black belt, and immediately pulled it off with a whoosh. Originally, this kind of servant, His Highness Prince Jin, would have already bestowed them 10 feet of red one. Yet at this time, he seemed to have great patience as he stood properly and waited, smiling vaguely while he watched the little girl, who barely reached his shoulder height, grope him. His Highness Prince Jin was very tall, so Su Luo could not help but be on tiptoe. During this affair, her fingers would inevitably touch his fine hair, neck and skin. Glancing up, his pair of cold but seemingly smiling eyes met hers, and Su Luo's heart started to grow irritable. Had this bastard finally recognized her or not? In the end, had she been exposed or not? The little devil inside Su Luo was biting her blanket and rolling around on the bed fretting. But Su Luo definitely could not ask straight out, right? Wouldn't she be exposing herself that way? It was not possible to bring up the subject, right? With Nangong's intelligence, a careless sentence would just arouse his suspicions. Thus it could be said, it was difficult to do. This matter was really very, very difficult to accomplish. In the end, of all the 1,000 and 10,000 things she should not have done, she should not have used Nangong's carriage to hide from Lu Qingfeng's pursuit. This was just like escaping the wolf's den to immediately enter the tiger's den too. Sigh. Su Luo made a bitter face, and slumped as she thought about it. Finally removing an outer robe after much difficulty, Su Luo was about to breathe a sigh of relief when who knew? His Highness Prince Jin's cold face frowned again. Continue with the disrobing. 10 feet of red is an ancient punishment where a 2-inch thick and 5 feet long board is used to hit the bottom of convicts, hitting countless times until both flesh and bone were bloody pulp. When seen from afar, it is a sheet of red, hence the term 10 feet of red PS. These days, we just give out a pink slip too. Escaping the wolf's den to immediately enter the tiger's den. Chinese version of jumping out of the frying pan and into the fire. Chapter 252, Prince Jin's Royal Manor 3. He was only left wearing a thin white inner robe. What else was there left to take off? Su Luo became furious. She was glaring at His Highness Prince Jin with both eyes. His Highness Prince Jin slightly inclined his head. His incomparably handsome face was expressionless, arrogantly towering over her and looking down at her. Are you going against this king's orders, Su Yin? His tone was very level, very steady and very serious, as if judging this matter completely without any emotion. Su Yin. Hearing such a pain in the ass name, Su Luo was full of resentment. This situation would overwhelm any person. There was nothing she could do about it. Su Luo stepped forward with a bitter expression. However, the first button of the Chinese-style robe was at his Adam's apple. With just one glance, Su Luo could see His Highness Prince Jin's bulging Adam's apple. It was moving up and down erotically, so wild and coarse that made her unable to bear it, as her face blushed from her speeding heartbeat. Su Luo discovered her hands were disappointingly trembling. If it was anyone else, Su Luo would naturally not have such a large reaction. However, this person unfortunately turned out to be Nangong Luyin. With regards to Su Luo, he was special. She clenched and unclenched her fist. Su Luo's fair, slender hand slowly wandered over his beautiful fine porcelain-like neck. Su Luo consciously sucked in a deep breath. But unexpectedly, this breath that she inhaled was too sudden and too quick, making her unable to suppress a loud cough from coming out. Cough, cough, cough. Su Luo started to cough really violently, and it took quite a while for her to stop it. Such a clumsy chamberlain. If it was any ordinary person, he would have already been dragged out and beheaded. It was only Su Luo that would not be treated as an ordinary person. Nangong Liuyun's oblique gaze that was full of deep meaning unblinkingly stared at Su Luo. Su Luo somewhat embarrassingly lifted her eyes, meeting His Highness Prince Jin's eyes that were as unperturbed as a clear spring. Only behind his eyes he was not at all calm. "Are you afraid of this king?" A trace of curiosity flashed across His Highness Prince Jin's beautiful eyes. Those star-like black pupils unblinkingly gazed at Su Luo. No way. Absolutely not. How could she be afraid of him? Su Luo, whether in the previous life or this life, did not fear anyone. Then, why did you become so nervous like this? Could it be you like this king? His Highness Prince Jin pretended to be worried. Without any indignation nor anger, he looked straight at her. His tone was gentle and lazy, extremely pleasant to hear. Cough, cough, cough. Su Luo choked on her own saliva. "I'm a man. Don't you know I'm a man? Could it be that His Highness Prince Jin has an interest in men?" In an instant, the surrounding temperature dropped to the freezing point. His Highness Prince Jin's ruthless gaze fiercely swept across Su Luo's appearance. In a split second, Su Luo felt as if a sharp sword was stabbing towards her chest. It was extremely terrifying. The surroundings became very quiet. Neither of them spoke. Now, Su Luo wished she could slap herself. How could she just, right now? She wasn't at the Sunset Mountain Range, but at Prince Jin's royal manor. She was not Su Luo, but rather a little servant called Su Yun. This mouth, she couldn't stop it. Su Luo was so vexed that she could just die. Just at this time, Nangong Luyun shot her a frosty glance. This is the first and also the very last time. Although His Highness Prince Jin did not say it clearly, Su Luo was very clear about the meaning in his words. This was the last time he allowed her to speak thoughtless words. "Many thanks, Your Highness." In the end, Su Luo could only brace herself and agreed. "Humph, it's better to watch what you say." His Highness Prince Jin sneered. Su Luo started to undo the buttons on His Highness Prince Jin's clothing. The first button, the second button, the third button. Finally it was all unbuttoned. Su Luo let out a huge breath in relief. This breath carried with it a little sound, drawing His Highness Prince Jin's tranquil pair of eyes to sweep towards her. Now his inner robe had slipped open on both sides, exposing the beautiful, exquisitely sculpted porcelain skin inside. The two buds on his chest was faintly discernible, giving off an alluring and enticing radiance. Chapter 253. Prince Jin's Royal Manor 4. Su Luo was stupefied by the beautiful scene in front of her. Temporarily, she could not return to her senses. "Wait upon this king during my bath." His Highness Prince Jin's voice was demonically charming and languid. Inadvertently, a faint smile full of roguish meanings surfaced in his eyes. A pity Su Luo was gaping blankly at the beautiful scene in front of her. Thus, she was unaware of the corner of His Highness Prince Jin's mouth, evoking a slight self-satisfied smug smile. "Wait upon this king during my bath. Didn't you hear what I said?" His Highness Prince Jin's pair of pupils had the luster of gems. He turned around and walked towards a side wing in the manor. His handsome body was sculpted and tall, giving off an outstanding and noble aura. Even the view of his back was just like the gods, so distinguished that it made people look up to him worshipfully. To bathe? These two words spread to Su Luo's ear, was transmitted to her central nervous system, then the brain to process. Finally, information was sent back to her consciousness. In the next instant, Su Luo's entire body was unable to move. To bathe? Wait upon him while he was bathing? Nangong Luyan, this bastard, was he teasing her? Was he playing with her? Su Luo clenched her hands into tight fists. She was silently cursing him in her heart. At this time, although she didn't want to admit it, Su Luo had a faint suspicion. Could it be that this bastard really had an inkling and had made out that it was her? Should she wash her hands of this and immediately leave? Or should she directly flip her lid at him? In Su Luo's head, the rational part of her and the impulsive part of her fought again and again. They fought until it was hard to separate them, and also difficult to determine the outcome of this battle. While she was having difficulty making a decision, His Highness Prince Jin suddenly stood still. His beautiful eyes turned back, calmly and composedly casting a quick glance at her, with his dark red lips curving upwards. The result of going against this king, you could automatically imagine. A threat. This was indeed a naked threat. If she was indeed going to be dragged out and punished with caning, then in the end, wouldn't she have exposed her own identity? Rather than weeping bitterly and begging for forgiveness at that time, it was better to grin and bear with it now, and carefully wait upon him just this once. When she found an opportunity, wait until she was out of Nangong's line of sight. She would immediately look for an opportunity to escape from Prince Jin's royal manor. That's right, she would promptly flee far away. Su Luo made a fist on the sly to encourage herself. She squeezed out a stiff smile on her face, and in a flattering manner, she took a few small quick steps to catch up to him. What kind of thing is His Highness saying? How could this lowly servant dare to disobey you? I have now come immediately to wait upon you. His Highness Prince Jin nodded slightly, as if he was very satisfied with Su Luo's reaction. Such a huge palatial room in the side wing, with steam rising in spirals leading to a dense mist. His Highness Prince Jin wasn't wearing a stitch of clothing on his body. His jade-like body was soaking in the hot springs water. His pitch-black hair as black as ink was loosely tied with a band of red silk. He looked sensually alluring and wildly coarse. Small drops of water rolled down his beautiful back that was as smooth as jade. The clear and translucent droplets dripped onto the water surface, setting off tiny ripples with every drop. The exquisite, beautiful, porcelain-like skin amongst the dense steam was suffused with a faint pink color. Water droplets continuously dripped down. Even though it was only a beautiful back, it was already enough to birth an appetizingly steaming sexy work of art that could suffocate a person. Although it wasn't the first time she saw it, Su Luo still felt some tightness in her throat. She slightly turned her face away. Evildoer, ah, evildoer. He was an evildoer from the 9th layer of the heavens. Why would he come to Earth to wreak havoc on humanity? This kind of evildoer, who is able to withstand against him. Come here. Just when Su Luo was in the midst of indulging in flights of fancy, His Highness Prince Jin turned to the side and looked at her. A pair of beautiful pupils that was like the black pearls in the deep sea gleamed dazzlingly, unblinkingly staring at her. Just 2 short words, yet they carried a king's powerful prestige that would not tolerate any opposition. Su Luo secretly raised an eyebrow. You want me to go over, then I'll go over. In any case, the person who was being looked at all over wasn't her. Besides, this rarely seen beautiful scenery in the world, if she didn't enjoy it properly, wouldn't it be such a waste? Better yet, give her a camera to take some shots of his nudity. Presumably, it would sell for a high price, right? Su Luo, while silently cursing him, walked over to His Highness Prince Jin's side. She crouched down respectfully. Your Highness, what orders do you have? Chapter 254. Prince Jin's Royal Manor, 5. Originally as a chamberlain she was required to kneel and stoop low in humble respect towards His Highness Prince Jin. But Su Luo took this opportunity to take a shortcut, and merely kneeled on a single knee. And His Highness Prince Jin also pretended to not see it, as if he was still unaware. Give this king a back massage. His Highness Prince Jin calmly tossed Su Luo a loofah clothing, as if by rights he should naturally enjoy the service provided by her. Now his beautiful back had been steamed by the heat till the water on his skin was giving off a glossy luster, effused with faint pink fluorescence. It was simply seductive enough to make a person commit a criminal offense. Evildoer, ah, evildoer. Su Luo's heart silently cursed, although her hand never stopped. Through the soft loofah clothing, she started to carefully scrub his back clean. His Highness Prince Jin's phoenix-like eyes narrowed slightly, carrying a trace of mistiness from the water vapor, seemingly very content. The corners of Su Luo's mouth curled into a faint smile full of an indiscernible meaning. Back massage? Nangong Luyin, you are really enjoying this, huh? It's a pity. You left your back unguarded and completely exposed to others. You were truly audacious. One of Su Luo's hand was carefully rubbing his back. It kept on scrubbing his back, while her other white and slender hand noiselessly approached His Highness Prince Jin's snow-white neck. She lifted that hand and skillfully chopped down at that place. In such close proximity, the completely unguarded His Highness Prince Jin. In a normal course of events, it was a strike that would certainly succeed. However, the disparity in their levels was too big, and their strengths far too distant from each other. To the extent that the action His Highness Prince Jean took could only be seen as a blurred and lightning-fast moment. It was like his back grew eyes and his fine-boned, slender large hand deftly gripped Su Luo's hand that was striking down like a knife. He easily spun Su Luo to be in front of him with a tug. All that could be heard was a bang sound. Su Luo's whole body had been whipped into the water's surface. Then before she could react, His Highness Prince Jean had already sat her onto his thigh. He unhurriedly tidied up her black hair that had been drenched and disheveled by the water. That calm and composed appearance of his made Su Luo really want to send a punch his way. Moreover, as he slowly tidied up her hair for her, he also let out a gasp of surprise. Su Luo angrily glared at him, but His Highness Prince Jean merely began to laugh bewitchingly. Strange, it's strange. How did this king's little manservant turn into a woman? Su Luo's makeup disguise was very simple. After being soaked in water, her original appearance would appear. Nangong Luyan, that's enough from you. Su Luo angrily glared at him. She felt that she had lost a great deal of face. Not only did her sneak attack fail, she was even caught red-handed. This by itself wasn't much. But unexpectedly, even her disguise had been uncovered, and her identity was exposed on the spot. With this situation, wasn't her previous patience and endurance all for naught? Moreover, with this vile man Nangong Liuyan's character, she doesn't know in the future how he would make fun of her. See, wasn't he mocking her right now? Seeing the little girl in front of him huffing and puffing angrily, then recalling the act she had just put on disguised as his manservant, Nangong Luyan suddenly felt that it was really very funny. The more he thought, the funnier he felt it was. Suddenly, he laughed so hard that his whole body slouched against the suet white jade wall with both of his hands pounding the water surface. It seemed as if he had to laugh so badly that he couldn't hold it back anymore. Hey, Nangong Luyan, that's enough from you, stop laughing. If you keep laughing, be careful that I'll beat you to death. The more he laughed, the more humiliated Su Luo felt. Therefore she stood up flying into a rage because of the humiliation. Her hands were at her waist in a threatening posture. Okay, no more laughing, no more laughing. Nangong Luyan held back his laughter with great difficulty, before raising his eyes to meet Su Luo's angry little face. A split second later, he let out a pfft sound and started laughing all over again. Nangong Luyan! Su Luo pounced at him to try to pinch his cheeks. However, just as she was approaching, Nangong Liuyan's slender calf that was submerged in water hooked over ever so slightly. Suddenly, Su Luo, who was standing, became unsteady and directly threw herself towards his rock-solid strong chest. Chapter 255, Prince Jin's Royal Manor 6, a bang sound echoed. Su Luo was under the impression that she would have been knocked until she was black and blue all over. However, she discovered she had tumbled onto a strong and robust chest. Nangong's pair of hands was at her lower back steadying her, making the impact of her knocking against it not as hard. Could there be a more suggestive action that carried more weight than throwing herself into someone's arms? Su Luo's face had a long-suffering expression, wishing she could hit her chest just once. Nangong Luyan, let go. Su Luo seethingly scowled as she angrily said. Are you sure? Nangong Luyan looked at the little servant's fuming appearance. The more he looked, the more adorable he thought she appeared. He couldn't help but to extend a hand to pinch those fuming, pink, tender cheeks. Such a pretty little servant girl. Why should you disguise yourself as a little manservant that's not worth keeping? What a pity, it is a pity. Mentioning this, Su Luo's heart became even more infuriated. You already knew, right? Just now you were just making fun of me. Am I right? Nangong Luyan, tell me the truth now. Su Luo fastened onto his neck. The expression on her face was clearly that of flying into a rage from humiliation. Nangong Luyan was calm and composed with a faint smile on his face. He grabbed onto her slender waist and guided her straight in front of his body. The completely unguarded Su Luo's body ended up sitting upon his thigh. What do you want me to say? Nangong Liuyan's matchless handsome face was brimming with an extremely devious smiling expression. My foolish Luo child, You are just too cute. Even your acting skills. Okay. It was a little bit on the clumsy side. Su Luo had a mouthful of blood stifled in her throat. Not going up nor down. Suffocating her until it made her feel extremely unwell. She just knew it. Nangong Luyan, this evildoer, had already known her true identity. Starting from when she squeezed underneath the dragon-scaled horse's carriage, he knew. That's right. What the dragon-scaled horse loathed the most was the approach of strangers. She was able to squeeze underneath the carriage without being driven away. Wasn't this just like directly exposing her identity? How many people could get the recognition of the dragon-scaled horse? Fancy that. Before, she had all along thought her own performance was very good. Her acting even fooled Nangong, now that she thought about it. Su Luo shamefully covered her face. How humiliating. Nangong Luyan patted her little head, as the corner of his mouth lifted into smile full of a devilish air. Okay, it's fine. Even this king doesn't mind it. Why do you care about it? Rest assured this king won't disregard you, okay? I beg you not to say more. Su Luo wanted to weep but had no tears. She turned away with her hands covering her face. She just wanted to run away. Embarrassing, truly embarrassing. Nangong Luyan laughingly hugged her to him. Don't be afraid, no matter how much face you lose. You are still this king's people. Teasing me is really fun, right? Su Luo stood up. From her high vantage point, she looked down at him, meeting with that handsome face brimming with a devilish charm. The anger in her heart couldn't come out. Would it have killed you to admit earlier that you recognized me? However, don't you feel it was really fun? Nangong Luyan followed after, and stood up from within the bathing pool. His white jade-like, tall and lanky body was completely laid bare right in front of Su Luo. His ink-black hair with water droplets rolling down drop by drop. The two flower-like buds on his strong and brawny chest shone with an enticing gloss, while the contours of his waist were perfect. Two long and slender legs stood ramrod straight. This body was simply God's most perfect masterpiece. Another one didn't exist. This man, damn his erotic sex appeal. Damn his enticing attractiveness. Su Luo somewhat embarrassingly turned her face away, but her mouth unyieldingly said, Very fun, fuck no. Isn't it you who found it amusing? She was the one that was being toyed with, okay? Okay. Nangong Luyan laughingly begged for forgiveness. His lanky but powerful legs step by step closed in on Su Luo. Finally, he stood directly in front of her. His pair of deep, star-like eyes firmly locked her in place. Both of his hands held onto her slender shoulders. The corner of his mouth curved into a devilishly charming smile. Such an obedient Luo child, you tell me. How do you want to punish this king, so your anger will be appeased? Chapter 256, Prince Jin's Royal Manor 7. Not waiting for Su Luo to answer, Nangong Luyan chuckled roguishly again, as he leaned close to Su Luo's ears, and leisurely exhaled a breath before he added another sentence. Or else, this king can warm your bed as an apology instead? Su Luo's small face reddened as she glowered at him. Nangong Luyan, is it even possible for you to be more shameless? As expected, Nangong Luyan laughed even more shamelessly. He bewitchingly hooked up the corners of his mouth, as he reached out a hand to brush the tip of Su Luo's nose. The corners of his phoenix eyes raised slightly. You prefer being on top? This king can also lower his pride a little and voluntarily lie down for you, yes? This person was certainly shameless to an extreme. There was simply no limit. If she had a contest with him of who was more thick-skinned, she herself would definitely be the loser. Once Su Luo realized the situation, she resolutely decided to change the topic. She pulled a bathrobe from the rack and threw it fiercely at his face. She raised her brow and coldly said, Speak only after you're dressed. Being His Highness Prince Jin and behaving this way, what kind of scandal would this cause? Nangong Luyan was startled at her words. After a blank stare, he started to laugh uproariously, while he expressed extreme delight. Little Luo, don't you feel that talking this way is more frank? Nangong Luyan gestured at the situation between them right now. Nangong Luyan was undoubtedly naked, and the current Su Luo, due to falling into the hot spring pool, was drenched from head to toe. Her clothes were stuck onto her body, revealing and accentuating all her exquisite curves. The 15-year-old Su Luo was already displaying some qualities that were worth looking at. Nangong Liuyun's pair of charming flirtatious eyes firmly locked onto Su Luo's. He imprudently eyed Su Luo's softly drenched chest and his gaze darkened, a lecherous atmosphere brewed. This person. Su Luo regretted that she couldn't use a single slap to knock him unconscious. Huffing angrily, Su Luo snatched away the bathrobe in his hands and immediately tightly wrapped herself in it. The large robe wrapped her entire petite, yet fine and delicate body. Only a very small head, and that pair of clear large eyes were exposed, which made her appear rather innocent. Nangong Liuyun chuckled before he pulled Su Luo and had her sit down beside the pool. He scooped up water in both hands and gently began to wash her ink-black hair. Seeing such, Su Luo's eyes wrinkled. Being pampered like this felt very unfamiliar, very strange, but also felt rather nice. His sudden tenderness was a little bit too much for her. But Su Luo did not interrupt his thoughts because she understood Nangong Liuyun. Everything this man did always had a motive. As expected, while Nangong Liuyun tenderly washed Su Luo's soft black hair, his fingers moved in slow, indescribably gentle and meticulous strokes. The corners of his lips once again curled with devilish severity as he said, "Silly girl, you didn't even realize that someone had imprinted you, so stupid." Ah! Su Luo lifted her head, and her puzzled eyes met Nangong Liuyun's pair of heavenly black eyes. She inquired soundlessly, "Wasn't it that no matter how you disguised yourself or hid, you were still found by that Lu family's boy?" A murderous intent flashed across Nangong Liuyun's eyes, yet the large hand that stroked through her hair was still exceedingly gentle. "You knew?" Su Luo was indeed extremely curious. To be honest, during this whole time, she had been constantly analyzing this problem. Why was it that regardless of how she disguised herself or hid, Lu Qingfeng could always find her? This question had indeed perplexed her greatly. Nangong Liuyun's large heated palm brushed over her soft white skin, as his charming eyes lowered a little, and the corners of his lips lifted into a bloodthirsty sneer. However, his gentle voice bore not a thread of smoke nor fire from his anger. "Silly girl, you don't even know about tracing imprints. How are you even going to survive on this continent?" Chapter 257. Prince Jin's Royal Manor. 8. There were actually people who dared to put a tracking imprint on his girl. Good, very good, extremely good. Even though Nangong Liuyun was smiling, his smiling expression never reached his eyes. People who understood him knew that at this moment, he was truly angry. And once His Highness Prince Jin became angry, the consequences would absolutely be exceptionally grave. Tracking imprint? What kind of thing is that? Su Luo's head was raised like a curious baby. In her memories, this kind of high-level information indeed didn't exist. Nangong Liuyun was tenderly washing her hair, as a grim and murderous expression flashed through his eyes. However, his voice was still incomparably soft and gentle. Tracking imprint, ah. It is a kind of tool, and only a 7th rank or higher expert could make such an imprint mark. Lu Qingfeng's family had a 7th rank or higher expert? Su Luo's heart was slightly startled. That they don't have. However, this tracking imprint in fact can be purchased at an auction with a lot of gold coins. Nangong Liuyun's slender fingers gently wrung her hair dry. Afterwards, he used a clean embroidered towel to wipe Su Luo's jet-black long hair. Do you know where the opponent had placed the tracking imprint? A light bulb suddenly lit up in Su Luo's mind. With a distracted and stunned expression, she pointed to her own hair. Here. Nangong Liuyun indulgently, and in a spoiling manner hooked her nose a few times. His eyes were filled with tender sentiments. You are still not considered very dumb. Su Luo helplessly sighed. It's no wonder. It's no wonder that Lu Qingfeng could dispatch people that followed my trail. As it turned out, it was because of this. But since now it's washed off, would it be fine just like this? That will depend on who is washing it. Nangong Liuyun's pair of flowery eyes were giving off soft waves of an intoxicatingly spoiling expression that could drown a person. If you were to wash it yourself, it would take you until you reach the 7th rank, before you can wash it away. What? At this moment, Su Luo was practically fuming with rage between gritted teeth. Damn you, Lu Qingfeng. You actually planted such a malicious tracking imprint on this lady. If this lady didn't reach the 7th rank, if she didn't have the 7th ranked Nangong Liuyan's help in washing it off, then even if she was buried under the mud, she would still have been found? At this moment, with regards to this unknown world, Su Luo had a kind of unprecedented reverence in her heart. No need to be afraid, you have this king here. Nangong Liuyan stood up while speaking, his strong arms bringing her into his embrace. His eyes were firmly locked onto her, resolutely not allowing her to escape. With this king present, who dares to not grow eyes and bully you, wants to court death. Su Luo lightly returned his look, the corner of her mouth rose slightly. She quietly and coldly said, I don't need your borrowed kindness, my own hatred, I will avenge personally. The light in Nangong Liuyan's eyes dimmed for a split second, but very quickly, it once again restored its dazzling luster. This king actually forgot you. This girl's talent is at the pinnacle of the best. Come over, let this king have a look. How much progress has this king's little princess made in her cultivation? Before Su Luo could react, her wrist was already being held by him. She also didn't know how long Nangong Liuyan was going to test her. He merely placed his white jade-like lanky finger on her wrist. In merely a split second, Nangong Liuyan's beautiful pair of eyes, which used to looking down on the world, became serious, then started blankly as if in complete disbelief. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. After taking a deep breath, he then fixed his gaze on Su Luo. His eyes were full of shock. You are already now at the 2nd rank? She was not only at 2nd rank, but also at the peak of the 2nd rank. It was very possible that in the next second, she would break through to the 3rd rank. How could this be possible? Obviously just half a month ago when they parted, she was still a little good for nothing. She didn't have a bit of spirit strength back then. How could there be a person who in such a short period of half a month, from nothing to having it, from 0, immediately jumping up to the 2nd rank? Chapter 258, Prince Jin's Royal Manor 9. Even the genius among geniuses, the legendary His Highness Prince Jin, was stunned stupid by Su Luo's kind of promotion speed. In the end, how did you practice? A touch of astonishment passed through Nangong Liuyan's normally indifferent gaze. Even Nangong was surprised by this. So her cultivation speed was really so amazing? Thinking up to here, Su Luo inevitably became somewhat proud of herself. She raised an eyebrow, smiled and very innocently said, Just causally practiced some and was promoted. Was it supposed to be very difficult? Nangong Liuyan speechlessly patted her head. A faint tender expression appeared on his face. He let out a sigh. Exceptional talent is only just like this. I really want to know, girl, once you grow up, what kind of alarming and extraordinarily splendid person you will become. Su Luo looked at him with a somewhat inquisitive expression. Her beautiful pupils lit up and quickly roamed around. Don't tell me my cultivation speed is faster than yours? Nangong Liuyan really didn't want to speak to her anymore. His poised and noble handsome face had a complex expression. He finally answered after a long time. This king cultivated to the 2nd rank using a period of 6 months. Still remembered at that time the teacher said that this king's cultivation speed, since time immemorial, is ranked 1st. Now you have smashed this record. His straight, ink-black hair gave off a slight gloss. His body had a faint aromatic fragrance. He unblinkingly stared at her with a mysterious and bewitchingly hypnotizing gaze that was as bright as the starlight. Even Nangong used a period of 6 months before reaching the 2nd rank. She herself merely needed about half a month. The arc at the corner of Su Luo's mouth started to expand. It continued to expand until finally she simply couldn't suppress her happiness anymore, and almost let out cheering sounds. Bang! Nangong Liuyan lightly tapped her head. His deep black eyes carried a touch of seriousness and prudence. Girl, no matter how you did it, but bear in mind, you must follow the right path. Cultivation is not something that happens overnight, and it requires endless years of time. The further you go, the harder the demons in your heart will be to overcome. Do you understand? Could it be that Nangong thought she had strayed to the demonic path of cultivation? In fact, she was clearly practicing the great dimensional imprint given to her by the venerable divine dragon. Furthermore, she had matched it with the slowed time in her space to achieve such a fast practice speed. Su Luo once again stopped her words. Should she tell him the matter concerning the venerable divine dragon? If she told him, then she might not be able to protect the little divine dragon's identity. Nangong Luoyan. Did he deserve her wholehearted trust? At this moment Su Luo hesitated. Nangong Liuyun's dazzling star-like eyes dimmed for a split second. His lazy expression also had a touch of hurt. He vigorously rubbed her head. His tone was brisk and blithe. What are you thinking about? You can be at ease. Would this king really covet your cultivation methods? In a split second, Su Luo almost blurted out the words. However, suddenly, an incomparably beautiful and delicate face flickered through her head. That was his childhood sweetheart, his cherished girlfriend that he indulgently pampered. She really wanted to ask if she told him. Then if one day the Jade Lake's fairy interrogated him, would he tell her? In just a split second of time, the words on the tip of Su Luo's tongue stopped. She really didn't want to think a person's heart would be so sinister. And she also couldn't bear to use this secret to probe Nangong, because it would be too cruel. She still couldn't wholeheartedly give her trust to him. Nangong Luoyan turned his head away. Outside, the warm spring had arrived with flowers blooming. The sunlight was just right. But he was unable to feel the warmth. This him that was feeling dejected had his mood instantly hit the bottom. Nangong. Taking note that his mood was not good, Su Luo wanted to step forward to comfort him. Silly girl, tidy up your things. Then you can go out so as to not catch a cold. Nangong's pleasant manner was like a temperate cloud and gentle wind as he rubbed her head. His actions were as gentle as before and his eyes still carried the same indulgent spoiling manner. However, this made Su Luo's heart tightly clench in pain. Chapter 259. Prince Jin's Royal Manor 10. Watching the scene of Nangong Liuyan's back as he took large strides to walk away, Su Luo's hands clenched tightly into fists. She knew her split second of hesitation hurt him. However, was she wrong? If Nangong Luoyan was simply Nangong Luoyan, based on him protecting her and her trust in him, there shouldn't be a lot of misunderstandings and doubt between them. However, in reality, facts weren't always that simple. At least from what she knew, that Jade Lake's fairy could influence Nangong Luoyan. Even though he knew the other party sent people to chase after her to kill her, he was still able to fool her without changing his expression. This kind of him. How could he ask her to bet all her trust on him? She could believe him, but she could not guarantee her secrets between Nangong Luoyan and the Jade Lake's fairy. Therefore, in order to protect herself, she held fast to her secret. This way she wasn't wrong. She shouldn't have done something wrong, right? The great bathing hall had a dense mist with rising steam. Taking into account Su Luo's current mood, the dense layers of mist confused her, and she couldn't find a way out. Since her fake identity was already unmasked by Nangong, she didn't need to act as a fawning lowly servant again. Now there was no need for her to stay at Prince Jin's royal manor. Su Luo shook her head to wake herself up. Afterwards, she began to tidy up her own clothing. Here, there weren't any women's clothing, just Nangong Liuyan's spacious embroidered robe. No choice, Su Luo could only wear his clothes for now. The clothes were made from the highest quality of heavenly silk. It was extremely soft and silky. Furthermore, it contained a little of the warmth that belonged only to him. Su Luo felt somewhat uncomfortable, but since the situation that appeared now was like this, so she could only leave it as it is. After she put on a hat, Su Luo directly walked towards the exit. However, before she could walk out of Nangong Liuyan's manor, she was stopped by the people at the gate. At the manor gate stood a row of armored guards. Every one of them had a dense, cold and harsh expression, giving off a powerful deterrent force. "Miss, please stop," the chief guard among them said coldly with a solemn expression. "I want to go out now." Su Luo frowned. Why could she not go out? Who set up this rule? Daring to directly say His Highness Prince Jin's real name, that was a taboo? The chief guard stared at Su Luo with alarm and trepidation. His face revealed nothing but merely blocked her path. Without His Highness's orders, people without tasks and such are not allowed to come and go from the manor as they please. Please, Miss Su, don't make things difficult for us. Su Luo smiled. Didn't I, a person without anything to do, just come in? Now I want to go out, please step aside. I don't want to make things difficult for you people. The chief guard's face was grave, not tolerant of any haggling. Without His Highness's written order, nobody could come and go as they please. Miss Su, you had better go back. If you insist on going out, then you only need to get His Highness's written order. If she could get Nangong Liuyan's written order, then why would she come here to try her luck? Simpleton. Su Luo secretly grinded her teeth. When she entered, she was disguised as a lowly manservant. Now going out, she had changed back to her real appearance. If it weren't for Nangong Liuyan letting them know earlier, how could the chief guard recognize her? And to still say this wasn't a sly plot by Nangong Liuyan? If I insist on leaving, will you people use force? Su Luo glowered at them coldly. Then we could only offend. We will personally knock you unconscious and drag you back to deliver you to His Highness Prince Jean. The chief guard lowered his eyes but responded matter-of-factly. Moreover, his attitude appeared to be very firm. Knocked unconscious, then dragged back to be handed to His Highness Prince Jean? Su Luo was so furious she made a fist. Without strength, then she couldn't be firm. Even such a small captain of the guard could firmly say out loud to knock her unconscious. Such disgraceful words. Su Luo pointed at them, practically fuming with rage between gritted teeth. Don't you people know? You must never casually offend a woman. Don't know, the guard said in unison. Su Luo almost fell over. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.